What up, though? This is the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, the podcast where six British fans from around the British Isles get together to talk about anything and everything Detroit Lions. And we're back. It's been a little while since you've seen us. It's been about 8 or 9 days. We've had a lot going on with us. Our very own Matt's been off gallivanting around Detroit, meeting a whole host of people, including Lions legend Herman Moore. He got to spend an evening with him, which I'm incredibly jealous about. Herman, as you know, we've started to get to know him because we're part of the Lions Nation Unite app now. We've got our shirts for that. They are amazing things. We really appreciate it's been sent over. But if you don't know already, the Lions Nation Unite app, it's made for Detroit Lions fans by Detroit Lions fans. There's lots of really great contributors on there, ourselves included. So, go and check it out if you get the opportunity to do it. It's a great app. Gets you to the best of what the fan content is putting out there. But anyhow, we'll move it on. So this is the College Football Podcast. I am joined, as always, by Ryan McCluskey for this one. We had a break last week, so that means we've got a hell of a lot of stuff to go through. But in the short term, the regular season's already over, Ryan, and what a season it's been.
Yeah, it's quite hard to put into words how the last 2 weeks have been, because I've been massively proved wrong by some sides. We've had some shocks. Things now seem to have fallen into place. We're now the regular season's over. Everyone that got bowl eligible managed to crawl over the line. Those of them that didn't get to their 6 wins, well, lick your wounds, go again. And the amount of hirings, firings, and perspiring, lots of sweat people out there, it's been ridiculous. And I don't even know where to start. I don't know where we left off, what's happened since, but it's been a whirlwind.
Tell me about it. Like you say, there's been so much happened. So with that in mind, you're not just going to get us once this week, but you're going to get us twice. We're going to be doing another episode on Friday. Obviously, the regular season is done. There is so much to talk about. Today, we're going to take a look at the news. We're going to take a look at all the head coach carousels that are going off. 2 particular big moves that no one really saw coming have gone through. A lot of coaches have been fired. Some are already getting hired. Teams want to get those appointments in right away to get the recruitment drives going. It is all over the place. We're also going to take a look at the FCS playoffs, which have already started. Ryan has been keeping a very close eye on that for us. So we are going to have a little look what's going off in there. And he's also going to give us a little look into rivalry week, because Ryan loves his rivalries. And the FBS season always traditionally ends with rivalry week. So many weird and wonderful traditions around. He's going to give us a little go around there, see what's gone on, who won, who's got bragging rights, who's won the weirdest trophies, because really there are a lot of them. And then after that, what we're going to do, we're going to take a look through the 10 conferences for the season. We are going to break down where teams have finished, what the records are, have a little look at the divisions, who's done well, who's done bad, and then we'll take a look forward at the title games and the potential for the college football playoffs, because those rankings are out, and boy, oh boy, they are not what we thought this season. There are going to be a lot of new teams vying for the top crown in college this year. And then we've got a few listener questions we're going to intersperse in as well for this particular episode. And then we've got a lot more to come on Friday. So we're going to dive down straight into things. But just before we start this podcast for college football, there's a little segment I want to do, and it's a bit of a somber start to this one, and it's to do not with college football, but this is to do with our one pride, and in particular, it lost a very well-known member this week, and I'm, of course, if you've not already heard, referring to Jim Bordeaux from the Lions on the Prowl podcast. He sadly passed away earlier this week in news that was a shock to us all, specifically over here. I've not known Jim for the longest amount of time, but him and Kurt and Ferg and all the guys at Lions on the Prowl have been very good to this podcast. Ferg, I know particularly, has given us a lot of hype over there. He's always watching these videos usually. But Jim and Kurt invited us on to their Lions on the Prowl free-for-all Friday show, which I attend as many weeks as I can do. There are some great guys on there with a great range of opinions. They're really good at what they do, and for them to see our content and to want to invite us on there to join in with that was huge for this podcast. It gave us an opportunity to increase our following, to get more people aware of what we exist. And after that, I was really nervous when I first did the show, I'm not going to lie, but Jim and Kurt and all the guys there made me feel incredibly welcome. And I got to speak to him more and more as the shows went on. And to be honest, the last time that we spoke together, we ended up about an hour after the Lions on the Prowl podcast had ended. We just sat there chatting with one another, everything Lions possible. And the one thing that really struck me about him is, I'd finished the conversation. I realized we disagreed on a lot of things together, but never at any point did I feel like I was in an argument, like, there was a heated debate going on, because that's the kind of guy he was. He was incredibly respectful, used logic to form his arguments to try and convince you that that was the right way of thinking. And you don't get a lot of that these days. A lot of people are very confrontational. They don't like to be in that style. But Jim was just a consummate professional with everything he did. And, he just really made me feel welcome. And again, for the podcast, they did ever so much. As soon as they joined Lions Nation Unite, the first thing when I congratulated them was they said, well, you guys should be part of it as well. And they actually went to bat for us and bring them to Chrissy and Herman's attention. And they didn't have to do that. But again, that's the kind of guys they are over there. That's the kind of guy Jim was. And I didn't know him for very long, but all I can say is I'm really going to miss you, Jim. I'm going to miss our conversations after Lions on the Prowl. And wherever you are, when that Lions Super Bowl comes, I hope you're up there celebrating wildly away, because, we're all going to be waiting for that moment. So a glass to you, Jim. Thank you for everything. And, my condolences to his entire friends, family base, and to everyone at Lions on the Prowl. I will miss him greatly.
Yeah, right. I can't claim to know Jim well. Only spoken to him once. That was on the town hall, Lions Unite Nation. But he was a lovely bloke. He was very patient, no butting in, waited his turn, very polite. He had great opinions, and he seemed someone that just loved the sport. He was an asset to the community, to the podcasting world, the fans. Lions on the Prowl, as you mentioned, they've done a lot of good stuff for us. They've helped us out, fought our corner when they didn't need to, beat us up, and it's a real loss. It came as such a shock. If you go all over social media, people really upset by it, because he was doing good stuff for a good cause in potentially a fan base that can be quite difficult at times, but always a lovely, patient guy, never had a bad bone in him, could never argue. But it's a real loss. And as you say, he's hopefully one day they're going to hopefully dedicate winning season, anything to him, because he certainly earns it for all his time and dedication he's given the Lions.
Absolutely. Can't really say much more on that. But again, my thoughts out to all his friends and family and to the guys at Lions on the Prowl. We're here for you if you need to talk. I know it's a very hollow thing, but we are. And Jim, you will be missed very much. Anyhow, we'll move it on now, and we'll start with the college football podcast stuff now. So we're going to dive down into the news, and the news primarily this week is about coaching changes. And my, oh my, have there been a lot. There are two very big ones in particular that we're going to start discussing now. And obviously the first one, you're not going to start anywhere else but Lincoln Riley, the quarterback whisperer, the offensive guru, the head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners, has jumped and abandoned ship, and he is headed across to Ryan's division with USC, which I'm sure he's absolutely thrilled about. He made the shock switch a few days ago now. I don't think really anyone saw this coming. There's no contract details as of yet, but I know LSU were offering him somewhere in the region of 12 to 13 million a year to go and take their job. So you would have to figure that they're offering something in that range, or maybe not above for him. I've seen some unofficial stuff which will put him up at crazy numbers, but we're still waiting to see what goes on there. He's been at Oklahoma for 5 years, and in that time he's posted a 55-10 record, which is really impressive. He's led the team to 4 Big 12 titles. He's led them to 4 New Year's Six Bowls, and what a New Year's Six Bowl is one of the top 6 bowl games out there. So these are the prestigious games that you have to do really well to get to. And he's also made 3 appearances in the playoffs as well with the Sooners. He's become famous for his ability to develop QBs. As I've said, he's worked with Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts. Those are all starters in the NFL now. He's got Spencer Rattler, Caleb Williams, Malachi Nelson there. All these 5-star recruits who want to come and, work for him there. I mean, Ryan, this is one I really did not see this one coming, and you've now got to deal with him in the Pac-12. What's your take on what's gone on with Lincoln Riley?
It's one of those things, because he was very coy, because in the night before it was announced, he was asked if he would join LSU, and he categorically said, I will not be the head coach of LSU, shut that down. And you just knew from the day after that he knew when he was making that statement that USC had approached him. They knew it must have been a done deal, because he was so adamant that he would not be leaving for that destination, like he knew something was in the water. USC does reports that they were willing to offer Mike Tomlin any figure if he wrote it down on a checkbook. So you can imagine that, like you say, he's got a good 12, 13, 14 million a year. He has got that. There's those rumours of the things they're willing to do for him, buy his houses. He's got a possible private jet. Like, he might have his own car for transporting. It's a phenomenal deal. And USC is a very attractive job for anyone. The Pac-12 is not the biggest conference, but as we've seen with Oregon this year, it's possibly the easiest stepping stone to get to the playoffs. If you dominate the Pac-12 and then you get a few high P5 wins, you will be up there in the playoff rankings. And they're a very prestigious school. Play at the Coliseum, fantastic. They've got a long history of producing Heisman guys, NFL quarterbacks. I can really see the attraction. LSU, they're on a bit of a slope after losing everyone after that national championship win year. He thinks he can do a lot. And as we've seen in the last few days, the power Lincoln Riley has, all the players that committed to Oklahoma that have just decided to leave said, we wanted to play for you. We don't want to be a Sooner. May not be a Trojan, but there's a good chance that we already know that a few of them have. He really holds some weight in the coaching world. And this is disastrous for the rest of the Pac-12. I absolutely hate this hire so much, because I know full well he can turn the Trojans round. They've just come fourth in the Pac-12 South. Terrible year. They stunk. Instantly next year, they'll become favourites, because they now hold all the cards. They're a heavyweight hitting side. They can attract any commits now, because they've got a QB whisperer. They've got a young offensive mind. And this has really shaken up everything, because once you get that big high-profile commit, I've noticed that all the dominoes now are falling. Yesterday, I saw so many head coaches get hired, and that's because these 2 high-profile jobs have now kind of gone, and it's just like the chips are falling as they may, and it's just started this ripple effect, and it's so hard to keep up with, because there's some shocks, like there's some really interesting, not necessary fits, and some crazy money's been thrown around. I think college has probably got more money to throw around than the NFL, because these boosters just walk around with blank checkbooks.
Yeah, I agree with you there. This has been such a mad thing, trying to do all the prep for these shows after a few weeks, trying to go through all the head coaches, try and figure out where they've gone, who they're hiring. It's been a nightmare, and I'm sure I've probably forgotten someone in here, but yeah, there's just so many teams scrambling to get their guys at the minute, because it's like with recruiting classes now, you need to get your guy early. If you don't get your guy early, you miss out on the recruits, could potentially start, set back a college for years if they miss out on good guys and start getting a bad rep. But, speaking of, the Sooners are now in a really, really bad position. I've got a few of the decommits and transfers here. So in the wake of his departure, 5-star quarterback Malachi Nelson, he was ranked 2 in the 2023 class, has decommitted from the Oklahoma Sooners, and I believe he's already committed to go to USC when he's eligible. So that's his 5-star quarterback going there. already, and he's not the last of the quarterbacks who may be transferring into the Pac-12, as we'll discuss in a little bit. And also, they've lost the number one wide receiver prospect from the 2023 class, Brandon Inea. He's another five-star guy. He's decommitted. He's not going there anymore. That's two huge blows for their upcoming recruiting classes. But in part of the current team they've got there, tight end Austin Stogner, he has entered the transfer portal. I fully expect him to end up at USC, but we're going to see on that one. And also today, five-star wide receivers Jaden Hazelwood and Theo Weiss, who are both already there, have both entered the transfer portal and are going to be going elsewhere. I'm sure there's a lot more in there, Ryan, but this has created a real bad situation for Oklahoma now. They could go downhill really quickly because, as we're going to talk about later, they didn't finish top of the Big 12. They didn't even finish second. They could see some good teams emerging in the Big 12, and they could be left behind very quickly if they don't get the head coach appointment right and stop this slew of players leaving.
It's becoming a trend in football where there's a lack of loyalty. Now, the players that are already there, I don't always get it. I understand you might love Lincoln Riley and you think, I might follow him, but you've got some sort of loyalty to your teammates. You don't just jump ship because your head coach is gone. I don't always buy it. Now, with the decommits, I saw someone say it's fine because when you and your family, when you come in high school, you go to you go on your official visits. The first person you meet will be the head coach at the time and one of the boosters. He is paid to get you to give a verbal and signed letter of intent to go to that college. He's the person that promises you the world. So when he then leaves and you decide, well, I don't actually know anyone else at Oklahoma. Do I want to be a Sooner? Maybe I don't, but maybe I want to go and see where he is. I can understand that. Now, Hazelwood, there's talks Marvin Mims, the star wide receiver. It's not official yet, could enter the transfer portal too. This is just awful. I feel so sorry for the Oklahoma fans, but the person that takes that job next does not know what they've got to work with. They won't know who will be there next year. They don't know who else is going to enter the portal. How do you plan to take over a team when you don't even know what your roster is going to look like? You're going in with total blind faith. This job is getting more unattractive by the day because of the players that they're losing. Like say Stogner, probably one of the top 5 to 10 tight ends in the nation. USC don't really have a tight end, so I'd expect him to go there too. Hazelwood is very much underwhelmed for a 5-star, but he could possibly jump ship too. They've just lost Drake London. Like I say, he's now going to the draft, so USC need that big-bodied catch passer. Like I said, but there's like they say Brandon Innes, the best 2002 wide receiver recruit. I don't know if he's going to go on USC, but he's definitely opened up his commitment. It's an absolute mess. Oklahoma right now are just sinking like a stone by the day. And the only way this ends is they have to hire a head coach. There's got to be some stability. Someone's got to stop the rot. And that means they're going to rush into hiring someone because it takes time to find the right guy. But with every day they wait to make that hire, they lose a decommit because the players look at that team and think, don't know where they're going. The Big 12, like you say, is really hard. TCU just got a new head coach. They could bounce back. We've seen the likes of Oklahoma State fly under the radar. Baylor have been beating up teams left, right, and centre. Teams are chopping and changing, leaving. This is a real big transition, and Oklahoma could get left behind very quickly if they don't act quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And just with in mind this big transfer of players, you say to follow the coach, etc. I just want to segue in this question we've had here. It's from Matt, our own Matt from the podcast. He's asked, do you think the number of players in the transfer portal justifies a return to the old rules? Now, obviously, if you wanted to transfer back in the day, you have to take a year out the program, or you have to go through JUCO to be able to get past that. But with so many players in, 'cause I believe I saw the transfer portal site on Twitter today saying about 170 players have gone in since Monday alone. We're only on Wednesday night here. It's a huge volume of players, but do you think there needs to be if not return to the old rules, some kind of halfway house where there is maybe a penalty for moving franchises, specifically if you're moving to a new coach who ups and leaves. Now, I had to think about this, and I thought if there is a possibility there, like in this country with our football, I know there is sometimes a condition in place in a manager's contract when he moves. I know the same was ours with James Rowe when he came to Chesterfield. He had a clause inserted that he wasn't allowed to go back and raid his old team for players, although he did somehow with their consent. Would make something along those lines, maybe, you think, where if a head coach transfers, he can't immediately go back and have a load of players transfer and follow him? Might be some kind of middle ground, or would you just go back to the old way to do it, or would you leave it as it is, even if it's getting abused?
I don't think you can leave it as it is. I think this rule is now getting abused. So if anyone's not aware, if you were an undergraduate, if you'd not yet got your degree and you transferred from FES to an FBS school, you had to sit a year. You lost a year of eligibility. If you went from the FBS to the FCS down, you were an instant starter, you were allowed to play. Now, my problem is it's the freshmen. It's these guys that have like redshirted or they played the freshman year, don't like what's going on. Oh, we'll enter the transfer portal because I can go somewhere next year and I can take someone's spot just because I've got a high star recruit. Like, it shouldn't work like that. Like, I agree that there needs to be rules put back in place. And I do like what you're proposing. If a head coach, let's say if Dabo Swinney left Clemson and went to Duke, let's say he can only take 2 Clemson transfer players. He can't just go back and raid everyone. Or he can only take 3 players that were committed to Clemson that decommitted into the portal can then go to Duke. Like, you can't just go in and take everyone. Same with staff. We're going to talk about it later. We know someone's trying to take all his old coordinators. Like, it looks like a bit of a shitty move. Like, you can't just raid your old team. Like, it's a kick in the teeth to the fans, the organisation, and it really says a lot about the people as a player. I understand if people want to follow a coach, but the NCAA, they have to kind of stop this and nip this in the bud. Those graduate rules will come back in. I'm pretty sure these were only relaxed because of COVID, because players lost that time and eligibility. I expect some rules to come happen because I agree. I think it's about 300 players now, FBS and SES, entered the transfer portal that like got a few star ratings in just 2 days. It's been absolutely ridiculous. And it just makes it impossible for teams to hire a coach because you just don't know what you can offer them. And it's just not fair on some sides. So they've got to nip this in the bud before it gets carried away.
Yeah, I agree. I think for sure I would like to see limits brought in, and then it might make coaches think twice about moving for a lucrative job and taking all their good players with them in some sort of calculated switch. So, like I say, if any of you guys over there don't know, sometimes in this country with soccer, if our managers move to another club, sometimes in their contract it will be negotiated that they can't come back and raid their old clubs of all the best players because of the instability it causes for them. Sometimes it's just not fair. So, maybe that system might work over there as well. Like Ryan says, take 2 transferees, a couple of decommits, etc. But that's your lot. So the team who's getting left behind doesn't suffer a massive, setback, because Oklahoma at the minute look like they're in a lot of trouble just because Riley's left, and it's going to be a tough time for them going forward. As for the replacements, I've seen Matt Rule mooted around, but he's on an absolute ton at the Panthers, and I don't see them spending enough money to force him away. But hey, at this point now, we're really surprised. So, we'll see what happens there. But we'll move on because we've got an absolute ton of these coaching changes to go through. I mentioned there were 2 really big ones. So obviously Lincoln Riley was the first, but the second one, Notre Dame head coach Brian Kelly, he's quit and he's gone to take on the vacant position at LSU, and he has transferred immediately. He's not even waited till the end of the season. He is gone, so he can get his recruitment started there at LSU. The deal is for 10 years and worth $95 million. So he's on about $9.5 million per year. To put that in perspective, I think Nick Saban's on about 9.7. So he's earning Nick Saban money now, and he's going to be there for a long time in what is a big gamble there by LSU. The Fighting Irish this year, they're 11-1. They are on the cusp of the playoffs. And as we're going to talk about soon with the playoff rankings, there is a chance they could get in there and they could go for a natty. But despite all that, he has jumped ship and he has left. He's broke the Notre Dame record for wins this season, most wins by a head coach. He leaves with a record of 113 wins and 40 defeats after 12 seasons. And he also made the college football playoffs twice, I believe in 2018 and 2020. Again, this was another one that maybe not so many people saw coming, but it happened very, very quickly. And LSU have taken a big gamble here with this one.
I'm not a fan of this move at all. It screams of desperation. The guy's 60. Why has he got a 10-year deal? He isn't going to see that deal out, I guarantee it. They wanted Lincoln Riley. He said no. So they've decided to go elsewhere. He knows the fact he was their plan B. This move just gets under my skin, because if you look all over social media, Kelly, it looks like a bit of a POS, a bit of a piece of shit. This guy didn't even tell his players he were going. He changed his Twitter header and his profile picture. He did a photo shoot with LSU gear before LSU even tweeted it. He could not have got any quicker out of Notre Dame. He flew out of there. Now he wants the predecessor, or his future successor. A lot of people want the defensive coordinator. I think it's Marcus Freeman. People like him much. He wants him badly. He's coming to raid his staff, not the players. He wants the OC and the DC, apparently. They're apparently willing to offer them huge pay rises to not even consider the head coach job. It just stinks, all of it. The way he's handled it, the fact that he didn't even let any of the guys know. He just didn't turn up one day. Apparently, he had an 11-minute meeting with the players. That was after he took the job, and then he left straight after. He didn't even barely say goodbye. It just shows, like, maybe, I know he's one of the best coaches in the history. I like to say BCS he did well in their playoff era, made a playoff spot in, like, say, CFP, but it's just such a weird time to leave them. He won't even stay for their bowl game. He won't even see if they make the playoffs. He could not have left on worse terms. I think he's really upset the fans how sudden and abrupt it's been. Because, as you said, they need a lot to go their way, but there's a chance they sneak number 4 and they're going to be doing it without him. And it's an awful time. Because now the players they don't have a game left, but all this is in the back of their minds. Like, the guy ditched us, he bailed on us at the last second. It's just left a very sour taste in the mouth in his reign. People will have a doubt about all his heart and where his head at was all this year. I can understand the lure to LSU, because Baton Rouge, fantastic place to play football. Tigers are a huge team. He's leaving an independent team. I wonder if Notre Dame have been independent too long now. I feel like they kind of need a conference going forward, but he's gone. The lights and the dazzle of SEC has just been too big for him, and he's now been drawn in. And he's got a big fat paycheck, but he's got a hell of a job to do, because LSU, they have not recruited many players. Don't rate the fact that they've even got a starting quarterback. He needs to turn around a national title winning team that is down on its heels. So he's going to have to earn that money, or he will not be there long, because they don't mess around in Louisiana.
And I think the final stab in the back to Notre Dame with this one is it came out, I think today or yesterday, that the College Football Playoff Committee have said they're going to take coach availability into account when doing the playoff seeds. So they might actually, if the results all go their way this weekend, they might still miss out because their coach isn't there. So he might cost them the playoffs, and he's left. I mean, that's the ultimate stab in the back, that one, really, isn't it?
For me, this is direct. I'm talking now directly to every person on that committee. You frauds. All your credibility has gone out the window. How can you hold it against a team that had their head coach laid away? You can't not let a team in the playoffs just because, the head coach left them the week before we made the decision. How is that fair? How can that be in your mental process of deciding who sneaks in? Because who's got a head coach and who's got an interim head coach? Like, it's just not fair. Like Oklahoma fans, Notre Dame fans, like, my heart goes out to you, because you have all been left high and dry by two guys that have just swindled you, and they're jumping ship, and now they're trying to take some of your assets too. So they're like crooks, like bank robbers sneaking in the night. They're going to take with whatever they can get.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm firmly in the territory for Notre Dame for this one. I do feel really sorry for them, and it should not impact their college football playoff chances at all. And hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it was just a spur of the moment thing the committee said about this, but you cannot let it affect them, because at the end of the day, they've only lost once this season. They may not have played the best at times, but they're up there on merit. They've won some tough games under difficult circumstances with a lot of changes, especially in that offensive line and the quarterback. So, hopefully for Notre Dame, this all works out in the end, and hopefully for Brian Kelly, it all ends in a dumpster fire, because this was an absolute dick move to make. But again, another big move that we didn't see coming. So the college football landscape is moving on quickly. Now, just to go through some of these other head coaching changes since we were last with you, another one of the big ones, and not all surprisingly, Dan Mullen, fired by the Florida Gators. That was only a moment of time. They were finished 6-6 this year, I believe. They've looked very unconvincing. They've had some bad losses. They've had some bad wins. They got 50 put up on them by an FCS team a few weeks back, and we said it was just going to be a matter of time until he was fired, and he has been. So he finishes after 4 seasons in charge. He has a 34-15 record, which seems respectable enough on paper, and he led them to 3 straight New Year's Six Bowls. Again, the Big Six bowl games. He's got them to 3 of those in a row, but that was between 2017 and 2019. Recently, the results have not been that good. The program is in free fall. They've had 6 defeats this season, like I say, and it's not gone well for him at all. And in the SEC, it's very competitive, and you can't afford to be left behind. And they've pulled the plug on him, and they've very quickly named his replacement, and they have gone to the Sun Belt, to the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, and their head coach, Billy Napier, who resigned from his position there, and he is going to take over the Florida Gators head job, I believe, at the end of the season. He's not quite done just yet, but once the season's over, he'll be going there. He's had a really successful stint with Louisiana. He's been there 4 seasons. His record is 39-12. He's 27-5 when it comes to the Sun Belt, and they've had a really good year. On paper, this is a big opportunity for Billy Napier now, coming out the Sun Belt, going to the SEC, uber competitive, a team who've got a lot of resources at their disposal. What's your take on this hire for them? And, I guess what's your take on Mullen getting fired? But that should seemingly probably be a no-brainer, that one.
Yeah, we both said that Mullen should have been fired about a week ago when they lost in, was it South Carolina? It was one right at the end. We said that he should have been given a paddle boat, and he should have had to paddle down the river down to the Florida Keys, because it took a week to get fired. Maybe that's how long it took him to get home. I like this hire. This is a really understated hire. I don't think Florida need a flashy name. I think they just need someone that knows what they're doing. This guy's taken a Raging Cajuns program that was treading water in the Sun Belt, which is a conference that is growing. These and the Appalachian State, they're raising the profile of the Sun Belt every year. This guy's got a good record. They're producing NFL draft players. Elijah Mitchell, I think, is now the starting running back for San Francisco 49ers. He was a Raging Cajun a year ago. They run the ball well. I can't remember the quarterback's name, but they've got a good offense. This guy is young, only in his late 30s, early 40s. This guy's got a lot of experience. I think this is a great project for him. As you say, Florida have got some draw in the SEC. They can get recruits. They've still got good talent, even though they've lost a lot of it. I think he's going to put his stamp on this side. I think expectations, keep a medium bar. Don't expect them to be jumping straight back in the title race. But if you're looking for a long-term project, I think this seems like a really safe hire. And I feel like that's what they need now, Florida right now. Just a bit of stability, just a bit of a morale pick-me-up, because in the long term, this could turn out to be a really good hire.
Yeah, I'm always a fan of, the guys who are proving themselves, maybe in the not so competitive leagues, good record, bringing a team around, making them play really well, getting his chance at a higher level. And obviously this is a big step up for him, but one that's been well earned. Like say, Louisiana doing really well in the Sun Belt. They've got the title game coming up this week, which we're going to talk about later. Hopefully he's able to end on a high there. with them. But yeah, I agree. I like this hire, and I expect Florida to be able to benefit from it in the long term. Obviously, there's a lot of competition in the SEC, so it may take a little while, but hopefully they'll give them the opportunity they need to get them to progress back up to the top of the table, as it were. So moving on now, there's been a few others. So New Mexico State, they fired their head coach, Doug Martin. He's been there since 2013. He's finished with a 24-74 record. Obviously, really not the best in the entire world there. About 1 in every 4 wins there for him. In 2017, they actually went 7-6 and won the Arizona Bowl, which was a massive achievement for a team their size. But outside of that season, they've not won more than 3 games in any season outside of that. So I think, that's a bit of an indication as to why he's been let go there. And it's been widely, I don't know if this one's been confirmed yet, but it's been widely said that Jerry Kill, who's the former Minnesota coach, is going to take over there. But he's not been a head coach in 7 years. I know he had a bit of I think he was having a problem with epileptic fits, something along those lines, which stopped him from coaching, but he's believed to be going back into the head coach seat there. I mean, New Mexico State, one of those independent sides, which always seem to be at the bottom rung there. But I guess they have to make a change every now and then to see if they can, land on a positive guide to take them forward.
I suppose you can only go so far off, like say, 1 winning season. Out of all those 3-4 winning years, to have that 1-7-6 kind of like just carrying him. Maybe they should have got rid of him sooner. Maybe they've been too polite, giving him too much benefit of the doubt. This seems a weird hire. Someone that's been out of the game so long, someone with, as you mentioned, potential hidden health issues. Is it going to rear its ugly head when he's back on the sideline? I certainly hope not. But it seems like a risky move to go with someone that's obviously got experience, but been out of the game so long, and that will maybe take a while to get up to speed. I feel like they could have potentially found someone there. Maybe they couldn't be picky. Like I said, they're not going to attract the biggest side. Being independent is so hard for a football team. When you're not aligned to a conference and you have to create your own schedule and you have to find teams that actually want to play you every year, that can't be easy. It seems like a lot of work for the athletic director and the team. So there's teams, and sounds rural New Mexico, so it's not maybe the most attractive location. It's not going to be easy to recruit and get players to someone out there, especially in a small independent school. There's going to be a lot of work to do there. It's going to be a long-term project. So I hope the person that takes it on understands that and has got years to actually offer to them, because it's going to be no quick fix there.
No, definitely one of the harder jobs to go to in college if you want to make a name make a name for yourself doing well. So if he does go, we wish him all the best. Moving back into the Pac-12 now, and this is another one you're going to love. So the Washington Huskies, obviously they fired their head coach during the season. They've had an absolutely rotten year, up to and including rivalry week, which has probably just topped off one of their worst seasons in years. They've got their new head coach though, and they've poached Fresno State head coach Kalen DeBoer. I think it's DeBoer. He's been at Fresno State for 2 years. He leaves them 12-6, and in a weirdly corresponding move since that happened, one Jake Haener, quarterback of Fresno State, has mysteriously entered the transfer portal. Wonder where he could be going. Ryan, potentially, another. We've talked about Jake Haener a lot this year. He's had an amazing year. I think it's about 3,900 yards, 32 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, I think it was. But that Fresno State offense has been buzzing and put many good teams to the sword. You've now got their head coach and possibly their quarterback heading your way. What are your thoughts on this one?
I like the hire. I think it's a solid hire, someone that's gone to Fresno State who weren't relevant in the Mountain West before he took over, but you look after them 2 years now, they're certainly relevant. They've caused the likes of San Jose State and Boise State no end of issues because they've actually put themselves in title positions now in the last 2 years. He's done really good work, built them up. And a lot of people don't know Jake Haener once was a Washington Husky before he was at Fresno State. this would actually be a return. And from what I've seen on Twitter, they don't want alt to do with him. The Washington fans do not want Jake Haener because they've already got a 4-star quarterback in Sam Heward, so they don't want the compilations. But Jalen Cropper, the receiver, there's rumours he could enter the transfer portal. Now, if he goes, I think he'll follow the head coach. That would be a good get for him. So I think this guy's got a bit of pull and he could bring some players. And Washington, they've had a horrible year. It's been so bad. They did not have a receiver or a running back over 500 yards individually. That tells you how bad it was, relying on their defense every single week. Still can't believe they beat us because we beat ourselves, but this is not a Washington team that we're used to. This is a Washington team that should be trying to win the Pac-12 and in previous years, trying to make the playoffs. It will not be easy to restore those glory days, but he's a young man. He's got a good reputation and he's been accepted pretty quickly. So if he's got able to pull some of those Mountain West guys over, get some recruits, I think Washington are a school that could turn it around very quickly. I think they could suddenly be a problem for teams next year. And it's a good program to be at. The Pac-12 has just got a hell of a lot harder in 1 year.
Yeah, tell me about it. And, there's rumours. I mean, obviously, well, we may as well talk about it now. I've not got it in my notes here, but talking about quarterbacks and the Pac-12, obviously, Spencer Rattler has also entered the transfer portal, and there seems to be a bit of a fight on between yourselves and Oregon for him. But in a nightmare scenario, the way could be that you've got Spencer Rattler transferring in, Malachi Nelson coming in, possibly Jake Haener coming into the division. That's it's not a pretty scenario in terms of how your Sun Devils go, is it? Unless Rattler chooses to come to you.
All the odds I've seen is because he's from Arizona, so he knows the town, he knows the state. He seems to be everyone's favourite. And apparently Jaden Daniels, our current quarterback, doesn't know if he's going to stay. He doesn't know if he's going to transfer or enter the draft. They don't want to wait. They're on about getting a quarterback. So the worst thing could be is Oregon is a weird one because they've got Ty Thompson. They've got a 5-star quarterback that was just playing as backup. So they've got their guy in the future. So Rattler going there would be a very difficult choice. If Rattler goes there, if Haener went to Washington, and if Jaden Daniels leaves us, that would be the worst thing that could happen. If we suddenly have no quarterback and everyone has a quarterback, that is the worst thing. Now, Rattler is the person and as the character got issues with, but he would be a huge upgrade. We've just gone 10-9 interceptions to touchdowns this year. Really not good moving the ball through the air. Even though we're a run-first school, we need a quarterback that can throw the ball. And Rattler can play. He's a good quarterback. And as Taib said, it's his home state. Is he going to mess about? Is he going to want to upset this coaching staff and the fans? Maybe he'll knuckle down if he knows it's a bit more important. I won't be surprised to see he'll make a decision very soon. He won't hang about before someone takes his spot. So by the end of the week, I think we'll know where Rattler's going.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Whereas, as far as Haener goes, though, he's got 1 year of eligibility left. He's had a massive year. I do hope he goes to a bigger school to be able to put himself on a bigger pedestal for next year's draft. If he ended up, let's say, the Longhorns, Texas, somewhere like that, maybe somewhere who needs a quarterback, or Virginia Tech, I said, would be a good fit for him there. But I do hope he gets a good school because he's had a great year and he deserves to prove himself at a higher level. But obviously, not a great thing if he enters the Pac-12, but it's going to be a close thing to keep an eye on. Quarterbacks in the Pac-12 are the hot commodity at the minute, so we'll see who else ends up there. And now, moving on with the rest of these coach firings so we can move on to other stuff. Troy, they've got rid of their head coach, Chip Lindsey. He's been fired after 3 seasons. He went 15-19. They've not made a bowl appearance under him, and that was bad because his predecessor took them to a Sun Belt title and made 3 bowl games in, I think it was 4 years. So it's been a bit of a fall from grace from them, and they've not really had the biggest year going. That's not a surprise, that one, Ryan.
No. It's weird, the Troy, because as you say, bowl games for these kind of sides are usually they're the base minimum. You have to get bowl eligibility to get another chance next year. That's kind of the bread and butter for most FBS coaches. If you can get bowl eligibility every year, the fans will accept mediocrity. But to go from winning the Sun Belt when no one cared about the Sun Belt. Now everyone looking at the Sun Belt thinking, there's some good teams there. They're not there. They've fallen off a cliff. He's left with a losing record, no bowl eligibility. Like, they are on a real decline when they used to be one of the big boys in that conference. Now they're one of the whipping boys. They're losing ground to Louisiana and App State, who are getting those big recruits in. It's not going to be easy now. To compete with those two teams in the Sun Belt is going to be really difficult. So it's going to be quite a challenge who takes that head coach next.
Yeah, I've not seen any names so far, but we'll keep an eye on that. Moving on, there's more teams. So Louisiana Tech, their head coach, Skip Holtz, he's been fired after 9 seasons. He's finished with a 64-49 record. 64 wins makes him the 3rd most winning coach in program history. They made 7 straight bowl appearances, winning 6 of them. But they've gone 3-8 this year. And for the first time since 2013, they're going to have a losing season. I guess if you see all these mediocre coaches who've had years of no bowls and no winning seasons getting fired, 1 losing season in 8 has got this guy fired. Does this seem like a bit of an overreaction to 1 bad season, or is it just nipping a problem in the bud and the right decision for Louisiana Tech?
I couldn't speak because I don't know the fans, but when you look at it on paper, that's a good record. And did you say 7 bowl games, 6 wins?
7 straight bowl games, won 6.
That is good postseason success. Now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. 1 losing record, a bit of a blip. That seems really harsh. That's kind of like that's like sacking a manager that gets you Champions League qualification in like 5 years. And then the next place you finish like 7th and get rid of him. Like, you just won't do that in most of the sports. So maybe something's gone wrong off the field, because to feel like a change of direction like that is a bold move, and that could backfire drastically.
Yeah, I saw the same when I was doing the research. I thought this seems a little harsh, but again, don't really know too much about Louisiana Tech. Anything could have gone off, but they're looking for a new head coach now, so we'll see who they hire. Now, going to a couple of hires to finish off. SMU head coach Sonny Dykes, he resigned from his role with SMU. He's been there since 2017, 30-18 record. When I wrote this, it was believed that he was going to be heading to TCU, but he's now been hired there. What do you make of this hire? SMU to TCU, not too far he's going, but yeah, what's your thoughts on this one?
This is a big rivalry. TCU and SMU have a rivalry game for the Iron Skillet, so this one is probably going to cut deep for a lot of fans. As you say, stayed in that Dallas-Fort Worth area, because I'm pretty sure these two teams, you can skip a stone between them in distance-wise. Good record, SMU this year. They were doing really well. Tanner Mordecai were flying. Kind of stalled to a bit, but I think if he can find a quarterback for TCU, they landed a 4-star wide receiver yesterday, I saw. So they've already, like, maybe that Sonny Dykes transfer is already like working wonders for them. But they've lost a huge running back. Zach Evans, their 5-star back, who's caused no end of problems, bit of controversy, has entered the portal. So it's a bit of a chopping and changing between those sides. I saw someone that could think if Mordecai leaves, Rattler to SMU. But I think to replace Gary Patterson after, 22 years of having the same head coach, he took them to near playoffs. So TCU have been as high as you can go, and they've also been really low. I'm pretty sure they went 5-7 this year. Missed a bowl game, so TCU fans have had the highs, the lows. I think Sonny Dykes is going to be an offensive powerhouse, because SMU score a hell of a lot of points, but they ship some too. This is going to be one of those make or break hires, but I think this could get them back in a Big 12 competition. I like it.
Yeah, well, I think hopefully when he goes to TCU, he should have a better defense there. I think Gary Patterson was known for having good defenses, so hopefully he's maybe able to inherit that and bring his offensive flair in and get something going nice and early. Obviously, his coordinator hires, whether he keeps the guys or sacks him, is going to be pretty big there. But I feel like it's quite a tempting opening at SMU now for an aspiring head coach, someone wanting to raise their stock a bit. There's going to be a lot of people eyeing that job.
Yeah, it's in a good conference. They've just like I said, they lost a few games at the end of this year, but overall as a success, they were a really good team. You're inheriting a quarterback that is a gunslinger. Like Tanner Mordecai, I think he'll stay this year. Don't think he'll enter the portal again. I think he's a junior, but if you're picking him as your quarterback, you can feel pretty safe about it. Like, give him some weapons, got some good receivers, a run game. As you say, it's fixing the defense, because SMU are like Wake Forest. They score a hell of a lot of points, but they conceded a lot too. They could not get that balance right. So if they get a defensive mastermind as their head coach, they will suddenly be dangerous again next year. And the scores will keep it down, but they'll keep teams out. So these two teams are two teams to watch next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who goes for the SMU job. But like I said, they've got a very good foundation there. They just need a defensive guy to go in there and fix things. And speaking of defensive guys, one who's off the market now, this would have probably been a good hire for SMU, but Virginia Tech, they've got their new head coach, and they've gone to Penn State, and they've taken their defensive coordinator, Brent Pry, to become their new head coach. Now, Pry's been a linebacker coach and a defensive coach at Penn State, and his defenses have finished top 40 in the FBS every single season he's been there. Obviously, their linebacker core has produced some studs there, no more so than Micah Parsons in drafts just gone by. This seems like, I'm going to move on to a question we had in a minute, but, this seems a guy who's done a really good job creating great defenses at Penn State. We know them for it, especially defenses against the run. They've been really good. This would seem like a good hire for them, but also at the same time, he's probably going to need some offensive help in there, because Virginia Tech have struggled on the offensive side of the ball at time this year.
Yeah, they've brought Pry in because the ACC is a very run-heavier conference. You look at the teams there, and a lot of them like to run the ball when they can. So this is a guy that's Penn State are known for stopping the run. That game against Auburn this year, they stopped Bigsby relatively well. Like, that was going to be the matter. I think, as you say, Yetur Gross-Matos, Micah Parsons, they've just gone Jason Owe. They've just sent 3 near first rounders to the draft. And that's no coincidence. This guy is a really good defensive mind. He wants to clamp teams down. He wants to keep them off the field, get off the field quickly. I think it's going to be his coordinators, like picking his offensive coordinators, his quarterback, wide receiver coaches. He might want his own staff there. They do need help on both sides of the ball. We've seen that they've struggled this year with Braxton Burmeister, very inconsistent as a quarterback, very up and down, throw 400 yards, can then throw for 4 interceptions. There's no real middle ground with them there. There's a lot to work with, because Virginia, as a state of football, is one of the best for recruiting. They produce some of the best footballers to Virginia. Now, this is going to be, can he recruit? Can he get them to stay in state and get them to come to Virginia Tech? That will be the biggest thing, how much draw he has in trying to get those 3 and 4 star, 5 maybe recruits. So this is a long-term project. He's very young. Like I say, he's a young hire. He's got a lot to give. So I'm hoping they're going to give him the time to turn this around.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see that. I mean, I like Virginia Tech. I mean, I still remember back to that opening day of the season when they absolutely whooped UNC all around the field, and they just looked like such a good team, and they just didn't seem to be able to, crack on this season. But we know they're going to have a good defense now. Hopefully he gets a good offensive coordinator there. And, there are some good quarterbacks in the portal at the minute. He doesn't have to wait long to get his guy. If he can go out and, like I say, get a Jake Kaner, if he can convince him to go over there, that would be a huge get for him. And he just has to go about fixing the other bits of that offense, and they could become good really quickly. But obviously he's a coordinator who's gone up to a head coach position now. Now, just to end all this coach spiel, because we've been on it for ages, I know Ash asked us, and I don't know if there's anyone who immediately comes to mind for you, but obviously this head coach is looking for elevated roles in teams. But is there anyone who, any other coordinators who jump out at you straight away as deserving a chance moving up to one of these head coach, vacancies that there is now?
That's a hard question. Save this for Friday and let's do some research.
We'll save that for Friday.
I'll give a list of 3 names, yeah.
We've had to do a lot of research for this episode alone, so we'll move that on there. But yeah, I believe that's all the head coaching hires that I've not missed anyone, have I?
No, not notable. I haven't seen many change.
Right, lovely. So that's all your head coach changes there. Hopefully, you're well up to date and informed on that now. Now, we're going to move on to the college football playoff rankings, I think we'll do next. Obviously, the source of contention every single year as to who's in, who's out. You know, for the first time in quite a while, this is a very intriguing, college football playoff ranking system because if one team loses this week, there's the potential that all four teams who are in the playoffs will not have won it before. And I think that's the first time that, a previous winner hasn't been involved in the playoffs. I believe ever. I think it's ever. There's always been at least one previous winner in the playoffs, but this year there's a lot of surprise contenders in. So at number one in the rankings, obviously it's Georgia. It's been Georgia since I think about week one. They got up there very quickly. They've not relinquished their hold on there. Michigan, they've jumped up to number two, and we'll talk about their games later because we've missed a couple, but they are right in the hunt now for a playoff berth. At number three, you've got Alabama with Nick Saban. They're always hanging around there. And fourth, you've got the Cincinnati Bearcats still hanging in there, despite a few other, the hate towards them, the division they play in. They are just hanging on to that fourth spot. And with the championship games and that upcoming this weekend, there's still potential for this to change. Michigan are playing Iowa, which is not easy. Alabama are playing Georgia, which is going to be a massive game in the SEC, which could just send these rankings into absolute free fall. And Cincinnati are playing Houston, which is not a good game for them because Houston are banging form at the minute, and I believe have rolled off about 7 or 8 wins in a row. And their offense is very potent. This is not easy. There's teams who are here to capitalize if one of them slip. And the two teams who are nearest in line to capitalizing on this, at 5, you've got Oklahoma State, who had a massive, massive rivalry win this week. They've just, they had that one loss about 4 or 5 weeks back, and we wondered if that was then done for the season. They've come back stronger. They've kept on going, and they are right on the cusp of the playoffs. And what a story that would be if they could get in there. And then at 6, you've got Notre Dame, but depending on what happens with the coach there, who knows what's going to happen with them, whether they're going to get eligibility if teams above them lose. And then sort of on the real outside edges, teams who may get in, but it's going to take a lot for it to transpire their way. You've got Ohio State ranked 7th. You've got Ole Miss ranked 8th, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you've got Baylor ranked in 9th. And now Baylor could actually make it with the game they've got this week as well. If results go their way and they win their game. Ryan, it's very hard to predict this. I think only Georgia, even if Georgia lose, they're probably the only guaranteed team in there at the minute. Those other 3 spots, there are 5 or 6 teams that could be occupying those this time next week when it really matters.
Yeah, Georgia are a lock. Even if Georgia lose to Alabama, they will still make the playoff. Even if it's a number 4, I don't see any way they fall out because you look at their body of work throughout the whole season, rotating between JT Daniels and Stetson Bennett. They have just hummed. And that defense led by Will Anderson has just been ferocious. That guy should be in Heisman contention, but he probably won't be. But as defensive lineman, he's probably one of the best in the nation. I read somewhere, I think he's got like 30 and a half tackles for loss in like 12 games. It's phenomenal numbers. He is ridiculous. Now I agree. Spots 2, 3, and 4, they are all up for grabs. Now, when I look at the outsiders, you can forget Notre Dame, you can forget Ole Miss, you can forget Ohio State. Those 3 teams, I don't see any way that they get in. But Baylor, Oklahoma State, they can both get in. Now, the winner of that title game will get in if Cincinnati loses. I think that because if you look at their records, Oklahoma State have already got Texas, Iowa State, OU, and I think they already beat Baylor in the regular season. That is a hard schedule. They have had to come through a proper gauntlet. So if they handle business again, even if Cincinnati win, I put Oklahoma State in the playoffs because I think they deserve it because of their schedule of work. Now, I like Cincinnati, but I look at their schedule all year. It's weak as piss. I'm sorry, Bearcats fans, but you have to understand that If you are going to stay in that crappy conference, the AAC, then your schedule will get looked down on every year. You have to leave. You need to be in a Power 5 conference if you want to make the playoffs. Let's say Ole Miss, I don't really see a way to get in. Notre Dame, now we've heard that the committee might use the fact that they've lost Kelly against them and they don't have a game to play. They are solely relying on everyone losing. Michigan, I think Michigan are fine. I don't rate Iowa whatsoever. I do not think they'll cause them any problems, but I see people panicking. Worry not, Wolverines fans. I've not been your biggest fan all year. You surprised the hell out of me last week, but book it in. Michigan, Georgia making the playoffs. Over 2 spots, totally up for grabs. Who the hell knows? Because Bama have not looked great. They struggled with Arkansas. They lost that game to Texas A&M. They are wild. You do not know what you're going to get. So those 3 and 4 spots, it's a toss-up completely. And I agree with you. Clayton Tune, mind the pun, Houston are humming along very nicely. They've rattled off 8 or 9 wins in a row. The Cougars are doing well under Dana Holgerson. They've got a great special returns weapon. I can't remember his name, but they are great in all 3 phases. And that is an upset waiting to happen. Houston v Cincinnati. I can just see it now. This is the final step, Cincinnati. They've just got to get all this one hurdle and they're in. I see them faltering.
Oh, yeah. There are so many, I don't think any of the 2 to 4 teams have an easy game this week. I do think Iowa aren't that good, but as you've seen this season, Iowa turn up when you've lost all hope in them. When you've sort of written them off and think, right, they've reached the ceiling, they're not going to do anything. I mean, that defense is still good. It led the country in turnovers for a good portion of this season. It can still win a game on its day. If it can shut that Michigan run game right down, then anything can happen. But it's really interesting. I'm going to ask 2 questions. Now, I'll answer myself, but what do you think is going to be the 1 to 4 this time next week when all the games are over? Who do you think 1 to 4 is going to be in order?
Georgia, Michigan State, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati. I think Bama get spanked, and I think they give Cincinnati a bit of sympathy, who might just edge Houston. I think any win for Cincinnati, I'd like to put them in there, but I think Oklahoma State, I think they could put a hurting on Baylor, and I think they could jump to 3, which would be a shock for some people.
And of course, Ryan was actually referencing Michigan there, not Michigan State. They can't reach there, but Michigan definitely can. I don't know. I think Georgia are going to be top. I think they're going to win. I think Michigan will be second. I think they'll win just about, but I don't think it's going to be an easy game. 3 and 4, I'd probably go Oklahoma State 3, Cincinnati 4. I think Alabama are going to lose as well, and I think they're going to be out. They nearly lost to Florida. Like you say, they lost to Texas A&M. It's not been the greatest of seasons there, but of course, we're not taking the panel into consideration. So, that's the thing there. And so the second question is, who would you like to see 1 to 4? Not who do you think will be, but what would you love? Would you just love to see it go to hell and loads of unknowns be in there? What would you like to see as 1 to 4?
I think what would be really fun is if you have Georgia, and you had Baylor, Notre Dame, and Cincinnati. That would be a wild top 4. That would be really fun to watch. Even though Georgia might slap them all, I'd still like to see it.
You know what? I think I'm in agreement there. I would love to see Baylor get in there, but I don't know. I'd love to see Oklahoma State and Baylor in there. But obviously, they can't be 2 Big 12 teams in there, so you're going to have to pick one of them. I would love to see one of them in there, and I would love to see Bama out. I want to see Cincinnati in there. Throw the Wolverines in and see what happens. Like you say, you may get some one-sided slapping around, but in fairness, we did last year. I mean, I remember the semi-finals not really being even relatively close last year between much bigger schools than some of these. So I think we need to shake it up just a little bit. But that's everything for the college football playoff rankings for this week. Obviously, next week when we're back, we'll know for sure, and we'll take a look at those games. But this is going to be a really intriguing set of fixtures this weekend, I can tell you. But moving on, there's one set of playoff fixtures that have already started. Of course, that's not in the FBS because there's just 4 teams in there, but we're going to drop down into the FCS. And last time we were on air, Ryan mentioned that a lot of teams were booking their places in there. That's now finished, and the FCS playoffs have actually started now because there's a lot more teams in there and they need to get the house in order quicker to get towards the bigger games. So I'm going to pass this over to you now, Ryan. Let us what is happening in the world of the FCS playoffs currently.
Yeah, for anyone that's not seeing the FCS playoffs, they have 24 teams, so it is a wide open. You have, I think you have 8 seeds. You have, I think you have 11 automatic bids, apart from the Patriots League and the Ivy League. I think the Ivy League doesn't get into the playoffs. It's kind of weird how they do it in the FCS, but we've had the first round now. So all the 1 to 8 seeded teams, they're the best in the nation. They get a bye week, so they don't play in the first round. So the first round teams have already happened now. So, and I'll start by saying that despite being number 3 in the country, James Madison Dukes, if anyone's out there betting, man, put £10 on them. They're my favourite to win the championship. They've just agreed to leave the FCS and join the FBS. I think they're going to go out with a bang. I think they've made the last 2 national title games. This is the year. I think they're going to get over the line. So that's Ryan's pick for this year. Now, so if we're looking at the first rounds, we had Incarnate Wood. They beat Stephen F. Austin 35-28, and they now have to play number 1 ranked Sam Houston State Bearcats. So it's not going, don't get any easier for them, unfortunately. That's the first, second round game. You have UT Martin. They beat Missouri State 32-31 in a thriller, and they get the number 8 ranked Montana State. Now, the Patriot League champions, who don't get a bye, they are the Holy Cross Crusaders, and they had a defensive tussle with Sacred Heart. They won 13-10, and they get a second round matchup with number 5 Villanova, the Wildcats. We've got the South Dakota State University Jackrabbits. They paggered UC Davis 56-24, and they set up a fascinating tie with number 4 Sacramento State. That could be a really fun game to watch for one that wasn't a ranked side. We've got the Southeastern Louisiana. They beat Florida A&M 38-14. They go to number 3 James Madison. So that's their first game on their possible title. A lot of teams people know. Eastern Washington, a lot of them know them because of Cooper Cup, their bright red famous field. They beat Northern Iowa 19-9, and they get up a big tie with number 6, the Montana Grizz, in one of the coldest stadiums. They upset Washington this year. So that should be one of the games to watch in the second round. And then you've got Kennesaw State. They beat Davidson 48-21, and they will take on number 7 East Tennessee State in the second round. And then you've got the Southern Illinois Sileucas, some kind of fancy breed of dog apparently. They beat South Dakota 22-10, and they get number 2. They get the North Dakota State Bison, who have produced numerous NFL players, Trey Lance, Carson Wentz. So that could be a fun game to watch. So that's the second round where the number 1 to 8 seeded teams come in. So also has happened in that first week, but this is kind of what I want. I want an expanded playoffs. I want the FBS to go to 8 teams, where you get your first round byes, or you get your quarterfinals, semifinals. That's how I think this should be following in the future, because there's some fantastic ties here, and there's going to be a really good, strong player after missing COVID last year with a short season. So if anyone wants to watch them, they'll be carrying on this weekend.
I agree. I think, and not only that, it's with more teams at the playoffs, you're going to get more competitive games down the stretch. In the last few weeks, sometimes if teams are easing off because they know they're not going to get in there, players will start, sitting themselves with minor injuries, etc., because they don't want to play on, getting more risk their chances. If the playoffs are expanded, then, more people are going to want to stay because they're going to get a shot at the natty, and you could get some big upsets on the way. There's some really deserving teams in there. Like you say, you've got Ohio State in there, you've got Baylor in there who could still make it quite easy. You've even got Michigan State who would still have a chance, I think, with a few of the teams lost. So,
and
yeah.
Some draft
James,
players to watch as well. Yeah, Eastern Washington, their quarterback Eric Barriere, one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. He's someone to watch in the 2022 draft. You've got Pierre Strong Jr. I believe he's the South Dakota State quarterback, running back. He's someone to watch in the 2022 draft as well. There's guys on these teams that are going to get drafted. James Madison, our very own D'Angelo Amos. He spent his career there. So these are the big boys in the FCS. And some of these teams very well be in the FBS in the next few years, not just James Madison, Sam Houston State, North Dakota State, people to keep trying to get them to jump up a level because they're just too good. They're too good for the FCS, but they just like winning titles. So I think their title game will be the week before the FBS National Championship. So it's a whole week, 2 title games, should be the end of January, but they're well on their way now to filling out those playoffs.
And as Ryan says there, James Madison is his lock for this. So if you do go ahead, put some money on it and win, don't forget to hashtag us on Twitter, ROTL UK, Ryan McCluskey. Hashtag us, let us know that you followed his advice. It's pretty good usually. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to the FCS as well. So I say, what games would you pick out of those 8 there? If you're going to pick a couple of games for people to watch out of those 8 that are coming up, which ones would they be?
I'm curious to see Holy Cross against Villanova because Holy Cross are a really small school. The Pioneer League is a really small, and Villanova, they're quite a high-powered school in football and basketball, very famous. And then Eastern Washington v Montana, 2 high-powered offenses. And if it's in Montana, they've got a famous stadium that's just under the mountains, freezing cold. I don't know who's got home advantage, but you've got the conditions against like one of the best quarterbacks. That should be a really good game to watch. And there will be NFL players to watch there and scout.
Yeah, I believe Holy Cross smacked UConn this year, didn't they? And Montana beat Washington for the first time in over a century. So these are teams who've upset FBS opposition this year. Maybe Holy Cross isn't as good as Montana's was, but yeah, they're games to watch there. So we're going to move it on. And which one did I want to do next? There was something else you were looking at this week. Oh, God.
Rivalries.
Oh, yeah, of course. Rivalries. So, yeah, the last sort of segment we're doing on news, the rivalry week is the final week in the FBS. Now, we're going to go through the divisions shortly, some of the remaining games in there, but Ryan loves his rivalry weeks. He loves to chat about it. So, again, I'm going to pass the floor over to him and he can let us know what's gone on with some of the more famous rivalries on there. I know for a fact there are a few good upsets in there, a few teams not expecting to win who did. But again, Ryan, what's gone on in rivalry week in FBS land?
So I've gone through some of these now. Some of the awards and trophies that were handed out, they weren't all this week because you have a rivalry week, but sometimes they're scheduled to meet earlier than that. So I've gone through some of the trophies and then picked out some of the cups that are played for, some of the scores. So let's go through them. So I've had a look at some of the trophies. Now, earlier in the season, a Boise State team that wasn't doing very well, they slapped Fresno State. They put a 40-point on them, and in that they won a milk can. So it's like a huge silver milk jug. It's inscribed with inscriptions on it. That's what they play for every year since I believe 2006, which I think is quite a nice award because quite rural states, Boise from Idaho. So there's must be a lot of dairy farmers, but that was a big upset because Fresno State, I believe, were just about unbeaten at the time. Boise State had been up and down all year, so that was a big rivalry game. Now, a big one. We've just seen a big upset that cost Wisconsin a title game this weekend. I did not see this one coming, but Minnesota took them down. And with doing that, they won the Paul Bunyan axe. This is a 10-foot axe that's inscribed down it. And it's got inscriptions throughout the wood all the years it goes down. And it is huge. It's like the size of a bookcase. And they play for this every year. Gets inscribed with every year that wins it. And Wisconsin, unfortunately, won't be going to the Big Ten title game this year. And neither will Minnesota because things didn't go their way either. So that was a game where there was everything to play for. And despite a winner there, they kind of both lose, really. Those two are both not winners. Now, in another rivalry game this year, Fresno State beat San Diego State. Now, they won the oil can. Now, this is rumoured to one of the oldest trophies in the FBS. It goes back to 1930. A San Diego State fan went to a game and he had a truck of oil, a barrel of wood oil in his back of his car, and it spilled out and was left on it managed to it's found on a building site. And a Fresno State fan found it and they like polished it up. They put inscriptions on it every year. Fresno State were the team that won it this year. That's almost 100 years old now. It's got inscriptions on it, everything. It just happened to find like almost like a garbage find, but they've made that a famous trophy every year. Mm-hmm. And my favourite trophy is, I didn't know this, but Notre Dame and USC play every year for their, now this is an Irish word, I'm going to butcher it, the jewelled shillelagh. It's like a club that looks like it's going to go.
Is it a shillelagh?
A shillelagh, it could be that, yeah. They play for it every year. And I didn't know this, but each year who wins, they add a jewel to it. So USC has a ruby, Notre Dame has an emerald, and they put it around the club. And this year, Notre Dame won, I think, 38-12. So it's encrusted with rubies and emeralds. It's like hopping. And that is something I didn't know. That's such a cool thing to have. And I'll go through some of the other ones as well. We've got the Commonwealth Cup. Now, Virginia Tech ended a very bad year by taking down their big rivals, the Virginia Cavaliers, both to just see out their poor years. They got swept by them by a few points. My Territorial Cup, Arizona State via Arizona, who actually managed to win a few games this year for their first time in about 2 years, Arizona State. This is 5 wins in a row now for the Sun Devils. The Territorial Cup, it looks like a mini Tri-Wizard Tournament Cup from Harry Potter. We comfortably beat them on defense. Jack Jones sealed the game with pick 6. So that cup is staying in Tempe, which I'm very glad to say. Big surprise in the Apple Cup this year. That is it's a nice gold trophy with an apple on top. That is Washington State v Washington. And Washington State put 40 points on a Washington team that could only muster 2 scores. And this is a Washington State team that lost all their coaches that were employed by the state because they wouldn't take the COVID-19 jab. And since that happened, they actually went on a run of winning games. Before that happened, they weren't very good. But the moment it happened, they beat Arizona State. They played well against Oregon State, took the Apple Cup this year. Things ended on a nice high note for the Cougars. Max Borghi got back. He's Christian McCaffrey 2.0, people call him, because he kind of looks like him. Their star running back, so someone to watch. Now, I picked this game because I like the name. It's the War on I-4. I'm guessing that's an interstate or a highway. That is the UCF Knights versus UCF Bulls. And it was a 13-10 win. It was very close this year because obviously UCF lost Dylan Gabriel as starting quarterback. USF kind of stink, but it was a really low-scoring game. But that one is a very close rivalry. They're just a few interstates apart, so that was quite a good one to watch. One of the smaller names, Central Michigan, they battered Eastern Michigan. It was something like 44-20. They won very well, the Chippewas, and that was a big rivalry game win for them. And then we've got the one of the most famous trophies in college football, the Egg Bowl. Got Ole Miss and Miss State. They play for that giant egg on that golden trophy. Nice win for Ole Miss. And then we'll talk about the Iron Bowl and Bedlam because those were 2 very interesting games.
Yeah, definitely. I love this. I want to learn more about all these rivalries because they just have some weird and wonderful traditions there. And we're gonna talk about another famed rivalry in a moment when we start going through some of these conferences and a very funny incident that happened with those there. But yeah, I can imagine it means a hell of a lot to some of these teams to lose, and especially that Washington one. To be a Huskies fan this season, it's probably as bad as being a Lions fan. The amount of stuff that's happened there, that won't have gone down well with them. And the new guy there, he's really got his hands full with that team, doesn't he? Especially with their pride now splattered all over the wall in one big gargantuan mess.
Yeah, this year couldn't have got much worse. I saw they were running with Dylan Morris as quarterback for the first half of the season. Just weren't working. They've got this high 4-star recruit in Sam Heward. Weren't playing him. Didn't get much better when he came in. Don't know if he's going to stick around. Don't know if he's going to want to bring Jake Hayner in. Like, there's a lot of questions right now about this Washington team. Got Olafosio. Is he going to declare for the draft having that pretty much season-ending injury? Will he return? They might want him to stay. DeBoer has got a big job on his hands. Like I say, lost a big rivalry game to a Washington State team that caused a few upsets this year, but off the field, a lot of turmoil, controversy. Need a whole new coaching staff, essentially. No real excuses can be made for losing so comprehensively in a title game, and especially in a rivalry that's got a trophy, because that's really going to hurt Huskies fans. Their fall from grace in the last 5-6 years has come hard. It's come pretty quickly too. So Pac-12, it's just got really interesting as the whole dynamic has shifted.
Certainly, it's definitely going to be one of the divisions to watch next year already, just with some of the names and coaches who are arriving in there. And yeah, they've got a lot of work to do to restore pride after that rivalry beating. But thanks very much for that. Just a nice overview there of some of the rivalries that have gone on this week. And I think the one, we touched on it briefly earlier, but Oklahoma State taking down Oklahoma, that'd be a big one for the Oklahoma State fans, won't it? Especially after the year they've had. Lincoln Riley's now gone. They've just smacked Oklahoma in the rivalry game. They must be, even if they don't get to the college football playoffs, they must be feeling on top of the world after this weekend and the way it's gone.
Yeah, it'd be a nice bonus from to make the playoffs, but they've taken huge strides in this division this year, led by Spencer Sanders, the quarterback, who for me wasn't a guy that would take a game by the scruff of the neck. They don't have star players. If you know what I mean, like you can't name many household names. I know they've got a stud linebacker, Malcolm Rodriguez. They've got Colby Harvell-Peel, who's had a really good year at safety. So they've got some good defensive weapons. But on offense, I really can't name many of their players. But they've just dug in. They've played really well on both sides of the ball. It's been balanced. The coaching staff, it's just gone so right this year. It couldn't have had better things. To take Bedlam down and then see the demise of their rivals, Oklahoma, the Cowboys fans must be absolutely delighted. It's great foundations for the future, even if they miss out on the playoffs, even if they make the playoffs and get absolutely splattered by maybe Georgia, they will smile every moment it happens through, because they would have never had any aspirations to even be in this position. They can count the lucky stars, they have to be where they are. And let's see now if they can keep this up. Let's see if they can keep a bit of dominance now in a big footballing state like Oklahoma. I like to see a bit of dominance. Obviously, they have not had much there since Barry left. Oklahoma State has always kind of been in the shadow of its little brother. They've always felt like that towards the Sooners, but maybe the tide's turning. Maybe they're going to kind of grasp this now. And who knows, the recruitment as well. It's going to be so much easier to get some big players on board next year. I expect to see some high-level recruits go to Oklahoma State and not Oklahoma now.
Yeah, I think like the Pac-12, the Big 12 just became a very intriguing division because of the teams who are on their way up and the big guns who are on the way down. Obviously, Lincoln Riley's had a stranglehold on that division. So it's going to be interesting to see who steps into the void, the power void now, or if it's Oklahoma go straight back up there. We'll see. But talking about the divisions, we're going to go, that's the main crux of our episode. Here we are going to look through the final standings of the divisions. Obviously, the regular season is done now. We're going to go through division by division, just let you know how the teams finished, the last couple of fixtures, how they did, and then take a preview at the games that are left. Predominantly, most of them are the title games now, or the conference games. There's a couple of other fixtures splattered in there everywhere. Some teams making bowl games. We're not sure of all the bowl games yet, but where we can, we'll let you know. So we're going to dive straight down. We're going to do it alphabetically, which means we start with the American Athletic Conference. You know, it's been mentioned a bit already. That's the home of the Cincinnati Bearcats, who have won that division this year. They finished 12-0 overall, unbeaten season, one of only 3 teams to do so, because unfortunately Utsa faltered on the last week, which was a massive, massive shame after the year they've had. We'll get to them in a little bit because I'm really disappointed in you, Utsa. I believed in you and you did not. You got smacked by a team you didn't deserve to. But back to the AAC. So Cincinnati Bearcats, they won that 12-0, 8-0 within the division. They finished by whooping SMU 48-14 and ECU, East Carolina Pirates, 35-13 to give themselves a decent chance of making the playoffs. They've had some big wins there, you know, to keep the committee's attention for now. Finishing second behind them, their team who they're going to be playing this week, the Houston Cougars, they finished 11-1 and they finished 8-0 within the division. The one blemish on their record came against Texas Tech of all teams. They did get taken apart by them, and that stopped them from having an unbeaten season and potentially been the home side in this fixture coming up. But a good season nonetheless. Obviously, Clayton Tune, as Ryan has said, has had a really good year. They finished off with 31-13 win over Memphis, and then they smacked UConn 45-17. After that, you've got the UCF Knights, maybe a disappointing season by their standards. They finished 8-4, 5-3 in the division. They lost Dylan Gabriel. They were never going to recover from that, and they were comfortably behind the top teams in the division in the end. You've got the East Carolina Pirates after that, 7-5, 5-3. They've made the Military Bowl. I don't know who their opposition is yet, but they've got themselves a bowl game, which they will enjoy. Ryan might be able to enlighten us as to which division they'll come up against when I've done this. Then you got the Tulsa Golden Knights. They 6-6 for the season, 5-3 in the division. So division-wise, good year. Outside of that, not very good. You got the SMU Mustangs. They finished 8-4, but they finished 4-4 in the division, hence why they finished lower. But a good season for them, but they finished off with a bit of a whimper, really. They lost big time to Cincinnati, and then they lost to Tulsa this weekend just gone, meaning they leapfrogged them in the standings in the division. Then you got the Memphis Tigers, finished 6-6, 3-5 in the division. They've made the Hawaii Bowl, so they've got themselves a nice bowl game there. And then rounding it off, you've got the Navy Midshipmen. They went 3-8. The Tulane Green Wave 2-10. The South Florida Bulls 2-10, and then the Temple Owls round it off. They went 3-9. They were just 1-7 in division, as the last three teams were. What do you make of the standings in this one? Obviously, Cincinnati, really, really good year for them. Houston, great year as well. Outside of that, UCF struggled big time, didn't they? They just never got over the loss of Gabriel, and they lost some bad games this season.
Can't put it down to anywhere else than that. Losing a starting quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, who has left the program, entered the transfer portal, so that's a huge loss for them. I feel like even with him, they'd probably still come third, but they might have got 10 wins, maybe. They might have eked out double-digit wins, but they would have never caught pace up with likes of Houston and Cincinnati. And then you look at likes of Navy, who were always in some games. They were close to causing some major upsets this year. They just fell short in some games, running that triple option, but trying to learn how to pass the ball, trying to kind of be a bit more adventurous, trying to catch teams out. So a 3-loss season doesn't probably tell you how many games you're actually in. USF are a weird team. For all the flashy stuff South Florida wear and they do, their play, it's just awful. They are probably the worst team in Florida, and they're such a big side as well. Like, they're a relatively big program, but they have been just terrible for years. They are really going on the decline, and I don't see any way they're going to be able to compete in that state. But I think when I look at this overall conference, the thing that strikes out to me is that at least one of these teams is way too good for it and kind of needs. I can't see Houston and Cincinnati sticking around here for long in the AAC. They just kind of seem to be a bit of a cakewalk. Both, you said, went 8-0 in the conference, so no one could even touch them. One of them's going to finish off the other, but no, they seem like they just kind of pick on everyone else. There's a very big gap between the bottom and the top, which I don't like to see. I like to see a bit more middle ground, but from here you just go from like 1-2 wins all the way to 12. Like, it really drops off the talent level.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've gone from the two teams that are 8-0, and then after that it's 5-3. It's a 3-game difference over 8 games. It's a pretty big chasm, as you would have it. So, well done to Cincinnati and Houston. Good seasons. I think Houston, they're going to be lamenting that Texas Tech loss, but I think they caught Texas Tech on a good week. They're one of those teams who can whip anybody one week and then lose against anybody the next. But I remember us covering that game, and I think they're going to be lamenting that fact, aren't they? Because they could have had 2 teams with an unbeaten season here.
Yeah, and as you say, home field advantage in title games can sometimes be a big factor. Now they're going to Cincinnati instead of hosting them. That could very well be a deciding factor.
Exactly. So, that's the AAC, and how that's played out this year. Now we're just going to go through the remaining fixtures. There's 2 fixtures left involving teams. Well, at the minute, involving teams here. So obviously, you've got the AAC Championship game, Houston traveling to Cincinnati. Cincinnati obviously are favourites for this one. I believe it's by 8 points, which feels a bit steep considering what's on offer. Might be a little less. It's 7 or 8 points. Been advocating, we've chatted. You've been long advocating an upset there. I believe Houston can probably do it as well. But money's on the table now. Houston at Cincinnati. How's this one going for you?
Well, I foolishly predicted that SMU would cause Cincinnati problems, and I watched the first half of that game. They absolutely destroyed them. Tanner Mordecai had like 10 to 15 even attempts. That defense was, and I think I've just seen Kobe Bryant, Sauce Gardner, like they've sent loads of players. They've sent 5 players Cincinnati to the Senior Bowl. That's the most I've seen of any team so far. So they have done really well. But I think I can see Houston giving them genuine problems because they're good across all boards, even special teams. I think Cincinnati maybe scrape up the line, but there's very much chance. You can make a real case for an upset here. If Clayton Tune has one of those days where he's able to pass for like 300-400 yards when we know he can, if he's able to take on those defensive backs and actually manage to get in behind them and score quickly, if they can jump out to a lead, maybe Cincinnati will struggle. I think that's going to be the key match, those wide receivers against those all-star defensive backs, because they've held their own and they've clamped everyone down this year. And this is a pretty heavy pass offense. Dana Holgerson is an air raid coach. He was at Washington State before that. He's brought this air raid here. They like to move the ball quickly and they like to take shots. So let's see if Cincinnati can actually hold their own against such a high-powered pass offense.
So money on the table. Where's it going?
I'm going to hedge to Houston. I'm going to say Cincinnati are due a bit of a slow week. It's going to come at the worst time.
Right, so we've got a slight bit of an upset there. I don't think it's just the biggest upset in the world because Houston, good team in their own right, but I like the Bearcats. I like Desmond Ridder. I hope they win this one. I reckon they're going to win this one. So we're going to split the difference here. Ryan's going Houston. I'm going Cincinnati. And then the other game in this division, we've mentioned the Navy Midshipmen. They still have a rivalry game of sorts to go. They still have to play the Army Black Knights. And there's a couple of lovely things to do with this one here. But first, we're going to tell you about the story of the stolen goat. And this was really funny because, before rivalry games, fans of each team, or cadets in this case, of the respective academies, they decided they were going to play a prank. The Army cadets decided they were going to play a prank on Navy. Apparently, there's this farm where all the goat mascots for Navy live, even the retired ones, because they've had a few over the years. The Army cadets went over there, they nicked the goat, the current one, took it back as sort of a memento. We've stolen your symbol, ha ha ha. But it turns out that they nicked the wrong goat. They nicked one of the retired ones, and that led to a little bit of egg on their face there. I don't know about you, Ryan, but I just sort of pissed myself laughing when I heard this one. I just could just imagine all these guys in military uniforms sneaking onto a farm and then just legging it with a goat. I mean, we do stuff like that over here when we're drunk, etc. You nick traffic cones, something like that. But just to run off with a goat in your hands, it's just a funny thing to imagine, isn't it?
It reminds me of South Park. Do you remember when they try to steal the horse and they put a bomb on it? They try to attach a bomb to it like that, and they get it all wrong. Like this was it looked a bit silly. Like I don't even know how they got it wrong. I'm guessing they must have had numbers or marked. How could they prove they didn't take the right one? Was it just old, or it seemed light-hearted, but it seemed like a bit of a distraction. Maybe this was something that they probably shouldn't have done after the game, or it seems like it's a bit childish, especially for two military academies where these guys kind of like, if we're suddenly in the next world war, like they'll be shipped out the next minute. Like it seems a bit juvenile. It's funny that they got the wrong one than they got the right one. Like it's just because this seemed a bit lackadaisical. I don't think Navy care. It's not, if it's a mind game, it certainly didn't work. They didn't get in anyone's head.
Yeah. I just find stories like this funny. It brightened up my week to hear the Storm go. But on a more, well, not more serious note, but on a lighter note for us, we obviously, and you especially, love your uniforms. Love to talk about uniforms. And I know you've probably got some from the weeks gone by, which we will talk about because I don't want to deprive you of that. But Army and Navy love to go big on their uniforms, especially when it comes to the game between them. And I know Ash has been posting some of the ones up there, but I think I saw I think it was the Army one they put up the other day. It looks absolutely sick, but they look like they're rolling out the big guns when it comes to the uniform battle for this one.
This is one of the best uniform battles they've ever had, and they've had some good ones. Army are rocking this. It's like cream with light brown and green tones. They've got a camouflage helmet. They've got like stripes on the shoulders. It just looks lovely, like proper tones. And then Navy have gone the total way. Navy have gone total brash. Navy blue. They've got the big star stripes banner on one side of the helmet with a big star like a commando. And then the other side, they've got a hand-painted warship. It's all red, white, and blue. Like, you couldn't have had any more contrasting. Please, people, go look at this. Go look at Uniswag on social media. You'll find them. These two look fantastic. They're such total clashes. I just love everything about these two uniforms. And the Army, the military appreciation ball game they play every year, it's great to watch because these two teams now they're learning to throw the ball. Like, they were always triple option run, but these two teams have beaten teams this year by passing. So this will not be like any other. There's going to be guys out there, quarterbacks, throwing the ball. And you don't often say this. It's one of the favourite games to watch every year. It draws a huge crowd. It's always on TV. And it's just going to be a really good stylistic matchup. And they always look good. I think Army a few years ago wore the big red 1 jerseys. People go look at them. They were black and red. Like, it was like a stealth bomber. Oh, phenomenal. These two teams just go all out for this game.
Yeah, this game is completely and utterly dripping in swag when it comes to the uniform. I believe it's December 11th, I think they're playing. But if you get a chance to, and there's a stream available, watch it just for the uniforms alone. It's going to be great. But like Ryan says, they are doing some good quarterback play this year. I think it's Tower Lavatai, who's the Navy guy. He seems to be doing really well. And it's always quite funny when you look at like the stats in Navy and Army games. On the odd occasion when they do get receptions, they're for like 30, 40, 50 yards, like per average. I think just because they're not expecting them to throw on them. So there's no one in coverage. And the gains end up being huge. You know, there's no short gains in these military games. They always just get you with it. Well, that's going to be fun to watch. I'm not going to predict who's going to win it because I've no idea. But, you know, both teams have been fairly good this year, as have Air Force. Air Force just missed out on winning their division, which we're going to talk about later. But we'll leave the AAC for now. And now we're going to move on to the ACC. So, obviously, a lot of good teams in here. Ryan's favourite quarterback resides in this conference. Now, it's split between the Atlantic and the Coastal. So there's two conferences to go through. So the ACC Atlantic, that was won by the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, a favourite of the podcast this year. They went 10-2 overall. They finished 7-1 in the conference. The one defeat was to Clemson a few weeks back, which stopped them having a pristine record in the conference. North Carolina State, the Wolfpack, they came second. They had a sort of middling season last year. They gave us Aleem McNeil in the draft, which I will forever be grateful for, but they've had a really good year. They finished 9-3 and they went 6-2. As did the Clemson Tigers after a really, really rough start. They seemed to get their act together. They started scoring points, mainly through Will Shipley in that run game. DJ's had a horrible year, but the run game and the defense have kept them in games, got them victories. They've also finished 9-3 and 6-2, but North Carolina State upset them this season, so they get second by way of the head-to-head. Then you got the Louisville Cardinals with Malik Cunningham and that high-powered offense there. They finished 6-6, 4-4 in the division. FSU, the Florida State Seminoles, Ash's favorite team there. They finished off the season 5-7 altogether and 4-4 in the division. They had a rotten start, but they brought it back with big performances from guys like Jermaine Johnson. We're going to hear a lot about him, so I'll mention his name for Ash. The Syracuse Orange, they finished 5-7, 2-6 in the division. And then rounding out that conference was the Boston College Eagles. They finished 6-6 on the year, but just 2-6 in the division. And then in the ACC Coastal, the Pittsburgh Panthers, led by one Kenny Pickett, who's interesting many a Lions fan in the draft at the minute. They finished 10-2 and went 7-1, exactly the same record as Wake Forest in the Atlantic Division. Second, somehow, by all odds, I've no idea how, but the Miami Hurricanes, after their absolutely rotten season, managed to drag themselves up to second. They finished 7-5, 5-3 within the conference. The Virginia Tech Hokies, 6-6, 4-4, as were the Virginia Cavaliers, 6-6, 4. Then you got the UNC Tar Heels and Sam Howell, 6-6, 3-5 for the year. And then you've got the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, 3-9, 2-6. And then at the bottom, you've got Duke, 3-9 on the season, but 0-8 in the conference. They got smacked around in their division big time. Now, is this how you saw the divisions going this year? Pittsburgh, Wake Forest winning, or was it sort of finish a little bit differently to how you had it planned out in your head before the season started?
I had no idea that Wake Forest would be anywhere near competing this year. I didn't expect huge things from Clemson, but I thought one of the Virginia teams would have stepped up this year. I thought one of them would have taken that division by the scruff of the neck. But Virginia football right now, it's the epitome of mediocrity. You look at both teams, it's just across the board, it's mediocre. Despite having Brennan Armstrong, one of the best quarterbacks in the entire nation, that defense was simply awful. Virginia, the Cavaliers' defense was just porous, so leaky. And then Virginia Tech just struggle on defense as well. Duke, I'll say this every year. If Duke didn't have one of the best basketball teams in all of college basketball, they could be an FCS football team. Duke are so bad. They are terrible at football. You sometimes they don't even know how to play it. They are saved by their basketball side because being an FBS team is determined across all sports. They suck at football. Georgia Tech, it's a really bad year for them because one of the star running backs in football, Jahmyr Gibbs, left yesterday for the portal. So any hope they had of the next year turning it around just disappeared for him. I thought when Clemson beat Wake Forest, I thought, Wake Forest are in trouble now, looking at their last two games. But Boston College, that Phil Jerkovic injury, they lost Zay Flowers as well for a couple of weeks. There's a few weeks in the middle of their season where without them two guys, they were just simply terrible. They kind of both came back and they kind of tried to put scrap at the end of the year, but this is one of the worst years I can remember for ACC football. Clemson, their offensive coordinator, things just weren't working. Will Shipley had that injury, but carried them. DJ Ungalele, just a bad year. Even with good receivers, just nothing ticking on offense, relying on a really good defense. I can't believe they almost snuck into that conference title game because based off such a good defense, solid linebackers. This was just a wild, weird year. And the title game, who the hell knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Because Sam Hartman, Kenny Pickett, but you've got two defenses as well that can concede a lot of points, but they score a lot of points. It's either going to be a fantastic game or a total damp squib. Can't work it out, but it's going to be wild.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just before we go on to that championship game, I think you said that a lot of teams have disappointed. But I mean, I think you have to give props to North Carolina State, second in their division. I mean, lost some good talent to the draft, but somehow they've put together some really impressive wins. That win against Clemson was their first for some time. And I think Clemson's first loss against a non-top 25 team for about 8 or 9 years. I think the future looks bright for them going forward in what is an incredibly competitive division. I know it may not be the best, but you look at even teams like Louisville in the middle, Syracuse can upset teams on the day. Florida State had a renaissance. I think behind the two teams that ultimately won out quite comfortably, it's been quite competitive all the way throughout their divisions, even if they've not been the best.
It's wild. When they missed the kick NC State, it went to overtime. I thought this is done, but Devin Leary, Zonovan Knight, I think they'll both be there next year. They run a nice, balanced offense. And Louisville, such a weird team, such a bad defense. But Malik Cunningham, I believe he leads the nation in quarterback rushing yards and touchdowns. He has almost 20 touchdowns on his own. I think it's 19. Yeah. he looks like Lamar Jackson, but he can't throw very well. But he rushes just as well. They just look just like when they had Lamar Jackson on the centre. That offense, it just ticks over nicely. If they actually found some defense, they would be very much a contender for a title game next year because they look really good at times, and they gave likes of Wake Forest no end of problems because Wake Forest, we've said it all year, their problem is running. They can't stop the run. Teams just gash them. Army absolutely annihilated them. Probably could have beat them, but no, it's such a weird, wild, and beautiful conference, the SEC. For all of its poor things, the football is just so competitive. Like I say, Syracuse, Garrett Schrader, great running quarterback. Just putting 2-6 in the conference, but on their day could probably beat any of them if they turned up.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at the Atlantic, and I mean, all teams have won over the minimum 5 games out of 12. That was not the best, but that's quite competitive to win, nearly every team to have won 50% of the games at least. So they've had a lot of good success outside conference as well. But I mean, Louisville, I know what you mean with them. Their last 2 games, they smacked Duke 62-22. That offense was raging there. But then Kentucky came along and absolutely wanged them 52-21. I think that in a nutshell describes their season. Wonderful at scoring points, but absolutely atrocious at keeping them out. So, they really do need to find some good defenders there. But we'll move on to the title game. We need to discuss it and make predictions about it. So you've got Pittsburgh versus Wake Forest. This is one of the most enticing out of those. Like you say, the 2 quarterback options, Sam Hartman, Kenny Pickett. I mean, Pittsburgh coming into this good run of form. They slapped Virginia 48-38 and then Syracuse 31-14 in their last 2 games. So they're coming in hot, putting down a lot of points. Wake Forest had that bad defeat to Clemson, but they rebounded pretty well against Boston College. But they're bottom of the division. They won 41-10 there. I mean, I believe if I checked right that Pittsburgh are favourites for this by like a point. I think there's a 1-point variation here, so it is neck and neck, but I don't know. I know you say it's hard to say, but what do you see happening in this one? Do you reckon, I mean, Wake Forest can put up as many points as they want, but Pittsburgh seem to have overall the more balanced maybe of the 2 sides. I think that would be fair to say, which may be big when it comes to deciding this one.
I think Pittsburgh are going to win. I think Kenny Pickett is going to have a huge game. I think he's going to shred that secondary. But I also think Sam Hartman, he's going to have a good game, but I think they lost Christian Beal for me, which when I saw that running back go down and they lost him for that stretch of the year, I thought they're going to struggle if they meet a good defense. Pittsburgh last year sent 2 edge rushers to draft, so they don't mess around on defense. They've got a bit of pass rush at Pitt Panthers. They always produce it. I think it's going to be a more sturdy defense. I think it could be high scoring, but I think in the end, Pitt will get the crucial stop or turnover. I'm going to give the Panthers the title this year.
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree with you there. I just think that lack of defense is going to haunt Wake Forest. We saw it against Clemson, and I think it's going to get exploited here. So I would agree. I think that's the ACC is going to Pittsburgh, but it won't surprise me if it was close, and it won't surprise me if it was high scoring either, because Wake Forest are always high scoring affairs usually. Just to close out the ACC thinking, now obviously we've talked about the Atlantic being quite strong there, but the Coastal, that's full of teams who've underperformed this year. Obviously, you've got the Hurricanes who've just had a rotten year. Virginia Tech, Virginia has been up and down. UNC, they've just had a rotten year as well. They're going to lose Sam Howell as well. Do you see anyone stepping up out that void at the minute next year, or do you reckon it's just going to be sort of the same again? There's going to be a lot of middling teams down there in the Atlantic. It's going to be the dominant division again in this.
I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say Miami are going to be very good next year because I watched their last 4 games of the year. When Derek King went down with injury, Tyler Van Dyke, true freshman quarterback, came in. What a breath of fresh air that kid is. He was phenomenal. I think he is going to put that Hurricanes franchise on his back, and I think they're going to be relevant again within next year. I think they could be a good team next year because the coach may be on a warm seat, but they lost a lot of guys to injury, and they still looked competitive down the stretch. I think that kid is going to be a proper franchise quarterback. UNC, I worry because they need a transfer quarterback. They need to get one of these big boy quarterbacks in because they've got Josh Downs. They've got that star receiver next year. I don't even know who the quarterback is. Don't know who the backup quarterback is, but they've got good defensive backs. They've got, well, Stormed up. I think, don't know if he's going to enter the draft yet. They've got, I always forget his name, the safety, something Kelly. They've got the good safety, but
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
there's weapons there, but I just worry that there's no one there to lead them. There's no leader. They need a running back and a quarterback, because I don't know what Ty Chandler's going to do. If I was him, I'd probably consider leaving. I would consider transferring if I was one of the star players. But they're going to be middle of the pack again next year. Then you see, you got like the Virginias, but right now I'd put Miami as favourites for the conference next year, just because I think they've got a phenomenal guy at quarterback that can probably win games on his own.
And obviously Pittsburgh, for the first time in 6 years, are going to be without Kenny Pickett. So they've got a succession of their own that they're going to have to deal with. And I'm not sure who their guy is for now. I'll have to look into that. But, a lot of intriguing storylines for the ACC next year. We're going to move this on. So now we're going to the Big 12. And the Big 12, what a division that's been this year. One that we thought Oklahoma might just run away with and it would be boring as hell. Ended up being quite a different story there. So the division this year was won by Oklahoma, but not the Sooners. No. That was the State Cowboys who came away with this one, courtesy of beating Oklahoma in the rivalry game this week. They finished the season 11-1, and they are 8-1 within the conference. The one defeat coming against Iowa State, who we expected to be challenging this year, who in their season just fell to bits. Second in the division, the Baylor Bears. 10-2 for the year, 7-2 in the division. So obviously a couple of divisional losses hurt them, but they're still in with an outside chance of making the college football playoffs. It's been a hell of a season for them. Then you've got the Sooners. They're also 10-2 and 7-2, but they lost to Baylor. So head-to-head, Baylor gets second place. After that, you've got the Iowa State Cyclones, 7-5, rotten record in the division. They went 5-4. They lost a lot of games and just didn't live up to the hype of what they were meant to be this year. Then you got Kansas State, 7-5, 4-5 in the division. The West Virginia Mountaineers, they were 6-6 and 4-5 in the division. The Texas Longhorns, rotten year for them and Steve Sarkisian. They need an uplift in form very quick if he wants to keep his job. They finished 5-7 and 3-6. As did the TCU Horned Frogs, 5-7, 3-6. But again, head-to-head, Texas won that one. They finish above. And then the divisions finished out by the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They were 6-6, 3-6. And then you got the Kansas Jayhawks bringing up the bottom of the pile, 2-10, 1-8. But they got their first divisional win, a big road win. First time since 2008. They beat a ranked team on the road. So even for the team at the bottom, they had a historic moment this year. I mean, we didn't see the division finishing this way this season, did we?
With Baylor, I knew Baylor would be good because Baylor seemed to always be good. The last few years, unlike under the Charlie Brewer years as a quarterback, they look really good. They've produced high-level defenders. They're just a really, really strong side. And they're a good, well-coached team. So they'll be here again next year. They'll be competing for that title. Oklahoma State just gone under the radar all year. They've just kind of just plugged away. No one's really bothered them. I think they kind of like the underdog thing. I don't think they like too much media attention, no pressure on them. Iowa State, they're a mess. If you think Brock Purdy leaves, Breece Hall leaves, Charlie Kohler, the star tight end, leaves, who is going to be there next year? Who do they build that offense around? Because Matt Campbell is on this huge contract. He's earning massive money. There's people saying like the NFL wanted him last year. Like, we're gonna have to see what they're all about next year because they've had a pretty bad year by their standards. They was talking of like these three guys will lead them to the playoff. Brock Purdy stunk all year. But whereas Breece Purdy just set the FBS record for consistent straight games with a touchdown. I think he's at 24. Like, he's going to be the running back one, I think, in the NFL draft, but they need a serious reload and refresh of talent because otherwise they're going to disappear into obscurity next year. As it stands right now, Oklahoma, they've got very little weapons next year. They might struggle to finish just over 500. They could have a historically bad year for the Sooners. It does not look good Caleb Williams is probably like just looking around in a room like, well, there's no one here around me. Who's going to catch my balls? Like, what's going to happen? So whoever takes over that job is brave, because those fans will turn around quickly. Texas are in serious trouble. I don't know what's going to go on there. Steve Sarkisian, he's got 1 year to turn this round. If he doesn't turn this round this year, I guarantee he'll be fired, because they will not tolerate back-to-back bad years. They've got Bijan Robinson on his day, the best back in football, but then they have this carousel of quarterbacks. I think it's Hudson Card, other guys that just haven't cut the mustard. A defense that we saw concede 56 points to Kansas Jayhawks. Phenomenally bad. Like, they are proper leaky. DeMarvion Overshown, only key spot, probably going to leave. I think they're going to be really bad next year. Texas could be proper bad. Texas Tech are a weird team. Like you say, actually went 6-6, but went 2-6 in the conference. When it comes to playing other Big 12 sides, they just absolutely suck. They just don't like playing their own conference, but they can actually cause upsets when they're outside and playing other games. They're just a really awkward team to play against, which is going to be really hard to predict next year. Kansas Jayhawks, what a great year for them. Even though they'd had a low record, they won 2 huge games. Upset alert. Man, they brought their fans so much pride and joy taking down Texas side. The future for them is potentially really bright. And TCU, don't know what's going to happen there. They just got high-level star recruit receiver, but they lost their running back, lost their coach of 22 years. Don't know what direction that program's going in. Sonny Dykes has got a big job to make them relevant again, because they were a Big 12 power once. Right now, they're kind of just treading water in that like swimming pool. Like, they're not in the deep end, they're not in the shallow end, they're just kind of bang in the middle. You just don't know what you're going to get from them. But they did take down a Baylor side, so there's proof there. They've got the weapons, they can do it on their day. They're just not consistent. So who knows what we'll get from them next year. But this is going to be a really hard conference call next year, if anyone's going to take a plunge.
You know what? I was just about to say exactly the same thing. I'm intrigued more than most of the divisions what's going to happen next. Obviously, you've got Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Oklahoma, who are a bit in front of the other guys. But after that, conference-wise, you've got 5-4 Iowa State, 4-5 Kansas State, 4-5 West Virginia, 3-6 Texas, 3-6 TCU, 3-6 Texas Tech, all very close to one another. And if you think, you know, Kansas State just suffered because Skylar Thompson got an injury at a really inconvenient time. They lost a few games in there. Who knows where they'd have been if they'd have still had him. They nearly took down Oklahoma. You know, that they had a real late comeback in that one where they nearly won that. But then, you know, West Virginia, they're a good team on the day. Texas, you would expect to get better under Sarkisian. You would expect them to recover from this year. TCU have got Sonny Dykes. Texas Tech have shown this year they can mix it with the best of them. And even Kansas, you know, their last 2 games, they only lost by 3 points to TCU and 6 to West Virginia. They're getting closer. I think I could just see this being very, very competitive next year, especially with Oklahoma probably being weaker. And it remains to be seen whether Baylor and Oklahoma State can maintain the level which they did. But I don't know. I foresee it being incredibly close across the board. I don't see any favourite in there whatsoever at the minute.
No, this is the conference, I'd say, where inter-conference games are the most important. Because as you see, all these teams are around 500, but they're finishing near the bottom because they're only winning a handful of conference games. Texas Tech, like you say, gone 500, made a bowl game, but they're like second, third bottom because they only went 2-6. They weigh so heavy. Your overall record doesn't mean a thing. If you lose all your conference games, you will come bottom. You can go 7-5, and if you went 0-5 in conference play, you could come bottom. Like, they have a huge factor, and they will weigh massively in how able you are to recruit. Because Texas, for most people, is the state of football. It's the biggest state, high school, college. It's a powerhouse. So it's a free-for-all. It's a total bloodbath trying to get these players to come to your school. So it makes the Big 12 just so competitive and just such interesting dynamics, because pretty much everyone hates one another. Everyone is a rivalry nearly every week.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be really interesting to see who comes up out of the the midsection here because it's just so big, and there's some team in there is going to take a rise, but we'll see. But before we finish off the Big 12, obviously Baylor, Oklahoma State for the title game. Who are you leaning towards in this one? Obviously, I know Baylor have had a really good year, but Oklahoma State, they've just surpassed all expectations as well. It's a bit of a tough one to call this for me.
I'm just going to give the Cowboys in a close one because I feel like now they've got this chance that doesn't come around often. They're not a hugely successful postseason team. I expect them to try and grab it with both hands. Spencer Sanders, he's a very safe quarterback. Don't take many risks, I think, and they've got a reasonably good defense. So I think they might be able to keep Baylor in check because Baylor's, I've seen like that TCU loss. They can be shut down, they can be slowed down, and they can ship points as well. Right? That defense on its day can be vulnerable, and this Oklahoma State team has proved that they can score fast and they can score quick and they can score in succession.
Yeah, I agree again. I'm going Oklahoma State with you, but I think it's going to be very narrow, and I think it's going to be a really good game. You know, whoever wins it, I want to see in the playoffs, basically. You know, I want to see either of the teams in there. So hopefully someone slips up and gives them that opportunity to do so. Again, we'll see. These slate of upcoming games really good, but we're both going Oklahoma State this week. So moving from Big 12 to Big 10, obviously, biggest repercussions at the minute. If you're a Lions fan, there's a lot going on in the Big 10 that's intriguing you, especially in terms of the first round draft pick, number one, that it looks like we're heading towards here. But we'll go through it. So in the Big 10, obviously, you've got the two conferences again. You've got the East and the West. So in the East, that was won by the Michigan Wolverines this previous weekend. They finished the year 11-1. They're 8-1 in the division. Obviously, their only defeat was to Michigan State, which will haunt them for a while, but they'll not mind because they're up in the playoffs at the moment. Second, you've got the Ohio State Buckeyes. They finished 10-2, 8-1 in the division. Obviously, lost to Michigan this past weekend, which was a huge hammer blow for their playoff hopes. They've lost to Oregon as well this year, so they're really going to struggle to get in, even if everyone loses there. Then behind that, you've got the Michigan State Spartans. I know they slowed up towards the end, but they've still had a remarkably good season. They're 10-2, 7-2 in the conference. Obviously, they've lost to the two teams above them, you know, so you can't really say much there. But they've had a really good year compared to what they thought they might do. We thought they might be a 6-7 win team, but they've ended up with 10, and fair play to them. They knocked off Penn State this past weekend. Still a good win, good end to the season for them, and they'll probably get a good bowl game somewhere. Then you've got the Penn State Nittany Lions, a bit of a gap here. So they're 7-5, 3 wins behind the other guys. They're 4-5 in the division. Maryland finished 6-6, 3-6 in the division. Rutgers are 5-7. They finished 2-7 in the division. And then you've got the Indiana Hoosiers at the bottom. They're 2-10 on the season, and they're 0-9 in division, positively getting slapped by everybody. And then in the West, you've got Michigan's opponents this weekend, and this was really, really, really close, this division. It's the Iowa Hawkeyes. They finished the season 10-2 and 7-2 in division, but behind them, 3 teams all ended up 6-3, just one game out. How little things matter so much. So you've got the Wisconsin Badgers, as Ryan mentioned, played themselves out of the title this week, finish 8-4, 6-3. Minnesota, 8-4, 6-3. Purdue, 8-4, 6-3. They won some huge games and then lost some ridiculously easy ones. A frustrating year for them. Then you've got Illinois, 5-7, 4-5. And then bringing up the rear, you've got Nebraska and Northwestern, who both finished 3-9 and 1-8. So, I mean, when it comes to the Big Ten this year, obviously props to both Michigan sides. I think they've both far exceeded anything we thought of them possible. Jim Harbaugh got his first massive win over OSU while he's been at Michigan. So, you know, playoffs are in their hands now. But Michigan State, they can't be upset with the year that they've had. It's been a great year for them both.
It's been a great year, but you kind of feel like now they've got so far, but so close, but yet so far, there's going to be regrets. I think Michigan State fans are probably going to be upset, but when you look at things, when you're coming to a season expecting 7-8 wins to be in a title or a playoff race for so long and then just fall short can you really complain? Kenneth Walker today has won the running back of the Big Ten award. Mel Tucker's won the Coach of the Year for the conference award. He's also got that huge, like $100 million contract. So he's just been repaid for all his hard work. So as a year for a Spartans fan, it's pretty much gone perfect. I think they're kind of upset now. Like they'll probably think to themselves, like, God, how did we lose to Ohio State? I think that's kind of what's in the back of their mind. Like, if Michigan beat them, we probably should have beat them. Like, that's going to really bother them the most, I think, because they were so close to bridging that gap. But the fall from Michigan State down is phenomenal. What a crap pile in the rest of that division. It's awful. And people actually thought that Indiana were going to cause teams problems this year just because they had Michael Penix Jr. and Ty Freifogel. Like, they were awful this year. Scarlet Knights, they were so desperate, like, to just get someone to play. I think they tried to get a freshman to enroll early from high school. They took a quarterback at like 16, 17, a 5-star. They asked him to come during the season to try and get in. Like, they were just clutching at straws. Everything about that conference was just awful. Ohio State, just, it's one of those things, like, their ass fell out when it really mattered against Michigan. That O-line just turned into a turnstile. You got Ojapo, Hutchinson, absolutely feasted on the quarterback. And what can Stroud do when he's under pressure? 9 plays out of 10. Like, Michigan just got the play calls and everything perfectly right, and it just fell into their hands. They let the pressure and the defense do its talking for them, and they got a huge win. And now it's all in their own hands. Michigan just win and they're in. That's kind of just that's the premise. That's all they have to keep in their mind. Don't have to be flashy. Now, if we're looking at the West, what a mess! What an awful conference that one division. Just loads of bad teams. Like, I've said this loads of times now. Iowa 10-2, total frauds. Not a good team. Spencer Petras, not a good quarterback. Tyler Goodson, okay running back. That offense, very ineffective. I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that they've given up either the most or the second most sacks in the Big Ten, and then now got to face Aiden Hutchinson. I think they're going to get absolutely mauled on offense by that defense. And then look at Wisconsin. All they had to do was beat Minnesota, and they got to the title game. They were the only person that had the game in their own hands. Everyone else needed losses, and they couldn't even get it done against the Minnesota team that's lost, 4 starting running backs, got a really average to crap quarterback. And they had, I think they were on a 6-game winning streak. And do you know how Minnesota stopped them? They stopped the run. Their quarterback, Braylon Allen, freshman, was averaging only 9 yards a carry. He left his game averaging 3. They absolutely just stopped the run because Wisconsin is such a one-sided team. Graham Mertz, awful quarterback, absolutely terrible. Can't do anything on his own. But it's just one of them days. Iowa can count themselves incredibly lucky. You can even say they didn't deserve to be there. They got there based off pure luck because Minnesota did them a huge favor. But for me, this is going to be I think, a one-sided title game. But the Big Ten, if you take out those 3 sides, the rest of it is it's total free-for-all. It's a really poor division for me.
Yeah, I'd agree there. I think it promised a lot more than it delivered. There's just a lot of teams, as you say, just went middling, didn't really seem to get in on the action there. And I know what you mean. I think Michigan State, they must be hurting. I mean, we didn't get to talk about it last week, so we weren't here, but I mean, 56-7 to OSU, one of the biggest games ever. And they just did not show up in that game whatsoever. You could understand if it was like 40-25 or something, they battle hard, but that offense of Ohio State is obviously amazing. You could forgive that. But to be like, what was it, about 48-0 down by half time is just, yeah, it's going to leave a big sour taste there for them. And, they've got to deal without Kenneth Walker now. I know they've picked up the Wisconsin running back, haven't they? But he's played about 4 games this year for about 80 yards. So it's hard to see how they get forward. I mean, it feels like a big missed opportunity for Ohio State, though. Obviously, CJ Stroud's settled in and he's going to be a great quarterback. Travion Henderson is a freshman as well, but he's going to lose 2/3 of his passing with his passing options this year. Wilson, Smith and Jigba and Olave are the holy trinity there. He's losing Garrett Wilson. He's losing Chris Olave. Might not be easy to replace them two because they've just been absolutely sensational all year long.
See, if I'm a Ohio State fan, I wouldn't be worried. They just recruit everyone. I know Jack Miller, they lost the 5-star quarterback to the portal this week because I think he saw no future behind Stroud, but they've got receivers waiting in the wings. Like Ryan Day, phenomenal coach. His record's like 34-4. He's only lost like one game a year. He is probably one of the best coaches in the entire nation. I don't think they've got anything to worry about. I think they'll reload pretty easily on receivers and not offense. But the way, in the manner they lost to Michigan, they will be really upset because they were just never in that game whatsoever. That total offense just got totally shut down by that Michigan defensive line. I really think the Ohio State offensive line is probably their issue because it just doesn't seem up to par. When you're protecting two freshman stud star weapons, you've got to protect them better than that. You've got to give them a little more time to operate, a little bit more room. But I think Ohio State, people were alarmed, but a bit too early to hit the panic buttons. They'll be back again next year, looking to make the playoffs again. Might do it themselves, but the stars have aligned for Michigan. This couldn't have got any better because Harbaugh's always had his critics. And I think for once he might have finally silenced them. Unless he fucks up this weekend. And then everyone will just hate him again. But he's put himself in a position to finally win over one of the harshest fan bases probably in football.
Well, we'll talk about that because for me, that's the thing. I think this game's harder than the Ohio State one for them. They've won the big game now, and that's the monkey off the back type of thing. But now they've got to back it up. Because I think they said the last time they were in the playoffs was 2018. They were in the playoffs, and then they lost the last week. They got kicked out. So that's sort of the next big hurdle he's got to clear. And Iowa just seem to turn up when they're not expected to and do the win. And that defense on its day can ruin you. It led turnovers in the country for a long time. It's a really good defense, but we'll quickly go over it. So Michigan, Iowa, Michigan win. Is that it for you? No contest.
No, winning they're in. Ohio State, unfortunately, now don't stand any chance. There's no way for me they can get in.
I think Michigan will win, but I think it'll be closer than people think. I think it'll be very nervy. So Michigan win there. We'll move it on. We've been going a while, so we'll get through the rest of these divisions. So we've got the Conference USA next. CUSA, as it's known, probably one of the smaller divisions. That's in an East and a West as well. So in the East, that was won by Western Kentucky, the Hilltoppers. Finished 8-4, 7-1 in the division. So good year for them. Then they're followed by Marshall, 7-5, 5-3. Old Dominion, the Monarchs, 6-6, 5-3. Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders, home of my favorite safety in the draft coming up, as you already know, Reed Blankenship. He's going to be a stud safety, and I hope we still draft him. They went 6-6 and 4-4. They got themselves a berth in the Bahamas Bowl. They're playing Toledo, so they've got a good bowl game to have a go at there. Then you've got the Florida Atlantic Owls, 5-7, 3-5. The Charlotte 49ers, 5-7, 3-5. And then Florida International, the Panthers, they roll up 1-11, 0-8 in the division. And then in the West, that was won by the UTSA Roadrunners, 11-1 on the season, 7-1 in the division. They were so close. 11-0, one game left against North Texas Mean Green, and they got slapped 42 points to 21 by them. They just ruined it at the last moment, but regardless of that, it's been an absolutely incredible season for them. The best they've had, I think, in the history of their franchise. Just one defeat there, but I think it's going to sting that North Texas pipped them to it, that unbeaten record on the very last week. It's such a shame. Just behind them, the UAB Blazers, that's the University of Alabama, Birmingham. They were 8-4, but 6-2 in the division, so just one game back. Then you got North Texas, the ruiners of Utzer's record, 6-6, 5-3. UTEP, the Miners, 7-5, 4-4. Rice, 4-8, 3-5. And then rounded out by Southern Miss and LA Tech. They both went 3-9 and 2-6. Oh, such a shame for UTSA to lose that unbeaten record in the last one, but a great year for them. Western Kentucky win their division as well. Going to be a good matchup to see who takes home that title.
It is going to be because it's a clash of styles, because Western Kentucky have the nation's best quarterback in Bailey Zappi. He's got 54 passing touchdowns on the year. Former Houston Baptist stud. He's going to the Senior Bowl too. I love the kid. But then you've got UTSA led by one of the nation's best running back in Sincere McCormack. He just carries that offense every week. It's very rare that you get to go unbeaten. So to get absolutely blown out by a team that finishes 500 is absolutely criminal. I would be distraught if I was a UTSA fan. There's no excuses for that, losing in that manner to that team. This is the Conference USA, like especially the first division, is very it was pretty tight. Like you had like 5-6 wins. Your team in the wins it only has 8 wins. Now this title game has upset written all over it, because you've got 2 total clash of styles.
So Western Kentucky open as favourites for this, I believe, by about 6 points, if I'm remembering rightly. Is that justified? I mean, because obviously UTSA were the unbeaten side and had some good wins this year. I think 4 or 5 times they were underdogs in games and they won. Is that a fair assessment? 6 points, and would you say Western Kentucky are going to win, or do you see us coming up with what would technically be the upset?
I think Western Kentucky will win. The best quarterback wide receiver combo probably in all of football. Javette Stearns, Bailey Zappi. Just ridiculous. It's such a high-powered offense, air raid. But then you've got a team that wants to play ground football, smash it down your throat, control the clock. 2 totally different styles of football. It's just going to come down to the defense. Who is able to keep the other one out of the end zone, hold them to field goals? How do they manage the clock? But I think I'd probably put it like evens. I don't think I'd put anyone favourite, because it's such a 2 different styles of football. I think UTSA will be reeling from that loss. So I think they're a bit vulnerable right now. So they could either come out and follow it up with a quick loss, or they could avenge it. But I'm going to take the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky.
See, I got invested in UTSA when we started doing the unbeaten teams and they were there. I started watching more of their games, and I sort of have got invested in them a little bit. And I was devastated when they lost the other day, but I hope they've come back and win this one. So I'm going to go with my heart on this and say UTSA win, but I would not be surprised if Western Kentucky get it. And it would be great for Bailey Zapp to show out in the conference game and really boost his stock, because he is declaring this year, isn't he?
I believe he's draft eligible, yeah. He'll be at the Senior Bowl as well.
Probably the best time for him to, yeah, exactly. Senior Bowl, he shines out there. He's going to, sky's the limit in terms of how he goes. So, yeah, CUSA, we're split. 1 Western Kentucky, 1 Utsa. We will see. Just going to quickly screen over the next division, the FBS Independence. It's not actually a conference, but it is the group of teams who are not assigned to conferences and so therefore don't take part in them. Just how they got on this year. So obviously Notre Dame led the way in terms of independence. They finished 11-1 on the year. Only loss was to Cincinnati. Outside shot of the playoffs. Who knows? We'll see what happens this coming week. After that, you got the BYU Cougars. They finished 10-2 on the season. Pretty decent year for them. A couple of bad defeats, but I mean, they've got one of the best running backs in the country there, who's had an absolutely amazing season. So, you know, it's been a good year as far as they go. They had the best start ever, well, for a very long time. I think it was about 60, 70 years or whatever. They started out 5-0, 6-0. Believe they did beat you as well, Ryan. I don't want to bring that one back up, but they did beat Arizona State. A couple of good wins in there. So good win for them. Then the Army Black Knights, 8-3. Not bad for a military team to get 8 wins in a season. It's a good one for them. Not so good was the Liberty Flames and Malik Willis. They ended up 7-5 on the year, but they took some poundings, especially from Ole Miss and Louisiana, who were both ranked when they played them. They won quite comfortably in those games. And I think Liberty lost to a service side this week, maybe Air Force. Not Air Force. I think they lost to a services side this week. It's not been a good end to the season for them. And Willis's stock probably has been hit by this, so not great for him. And then you've got a massive drop then. Liberty 7 wins. Next, you've got New Mexico State. The Aggies got a new head coach. They went 2-10. And then you've got UMass and UConn, the dregs of FBS football this season. They both finished 1-11. Mixed bag for the independents this year. I think it's very fair to say.
I think it's time to get rid of independents. I think it's time to just split them up and put them in a conference, because I don't see what they gain. I know they like picking their own schedule, and I know they like just controlling their own thing. But there's two teams that you mentioned there that belong in a conference because they're really damn good. BYU, Jaron Hall, Tyler Algier, and then the two Pat Owl brothers, the receivers. They've got BYU, one of the best schools of football in the nation. They belong in a conference. And if I remember rightly, this is the first time in their history they went 5-0 against the Pac-12. They've got a conference now, a contract where they're going to start playing all the Pac-12 sides. I'd love to see them join the Pac-12. I think it'd be really good to see them be there, because they dismantled everyone this year. They just had a great win against USC, and they just get better every year. Super well coached. They get all these state kids. They recruit well. Let's say Notre Dame, most famous college football teams in one of the world. They're just a really good side. They belong somewhere. Liberty, season started okay, kind of fell off a cliff. Total car crash in the end, really. Malik Willis went from looking good to, in the end, he looked terrible at times. I think it was 4 games with like 3 interceptions, something silly like that. Like, his passing really nosedived. And then UMass and UConn, just participation medals. They're just damn lucky to even be in the FBS, aren't they? There are other sides where if they didn't have good basketball sides, or they wouldn't even be in the FBS at all. They're carried by other sports, and they played out one of the worst games of the year.
Yeah, it was Army that beat Liberty this week, 31-16. That's not pretty. If you're
Army as well. Army did a bit more passing this year. Like, they actually threw the ball a little bit more, caught teams out, and you got Army, Air Force, you got Navy. Like, these military sides, they're actually really good at football. Air Force, I've seen a few of their games. They're really good teams, and they're really hard to play against. Like, I would love to see them in their own conference. I'd love a military conference.
I think Liberty have agreed to join CUSA, haven't they? And I believe New Mexico have. So I think they now have homes and won't be independents any longer, because obviously CUSA lost all its talent this year.
Yeah, a lot of it has been shipped out, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's the independents. There's no conference game there, no title game, because they're not a conference. They're just an amalgamation of teams that go elsewhere. Next up, you got the MAC. So you got the Mid-American Conference, and you got the MAC West, you got the MAC East, and a couple of surprises maybe won those this year. So in the MAC West, that was won by the Northern Illinois Huskies. I think this was the first time they've won a conference in a long time, if I remember. I remember reading some article that they'd broken a really long-standing back record of theirs. They finished 8-4 and 6-2, the same as the Central Michigan Chippewas. I love that name. But head-to-head, Northern Illinois win. The Toledo Rockets, they finished 7-5, 5-3. They're going to the Bahamas Bowl against the Middle Tennessee, so that'll be a good one for them. Ball State Cardinals 6-6, 4-4. Eastern Michigan Eagles 7-5, 4-4, and then the Western Michigan Broncos finishing 7-5 and 4-4. But that entire division, 6 teams, there's only 2 wins between the lot of them, so that shows you how competitive that was. And then in the MAC East, that was won by the Kent State Golden Flashes. They went 7-5, 6-2. They're going for their first title since 1972. A very long time ago. So this is a lot on the line for them. They just got here by beating the Miami Redhawks, Miami, Ohio, home of Sterling Weatherford, one of Ryan's favorite, under the radar guys in the draft. It took a play in the last seconds of the game. They were playing one another, and they came through and they nicked the division from under Miami's nose. Then you got the Ohio Bobcats, finished 3-9, 3-5 in the division. Bowling Green 4-8, 2-6. Buffalo Bulls 4-8, 2-6, and Akron 2-10, 1-7. The MAC East, a complete and utter dumpster fire this year. an intriguing one, Northern Illinois and Kent State going into this championship game between them. Both maybe devoid of success a bit recently, so someone's going to end the season incredibly happy indeed.
I love the MAC. The MAC's actually one of my favourite conferences because they play on a Tuesday and Wednesday. They have their own days scheduled for football, like they're never on a weekend, so it's always good to watch. And their championship game is always at Ford Field because all these teams are near Michigan. They're all kind of those northern sides. Ryan Dengel, the Bears fans, he's a huge Northern Illinois fan. I know that. He likes the Huskies. The championship game is going to be good because you've got Rocky Lombardi. What a great name. Northern Illinois quarterback. And you've got Dustin Crum, draft sleeper for the Kent State Golden Flashes. So you've got two high-powered quarterbacks, two offenses. But as you said, one of these divisions, like most of the teams have like 7 wins. Really close. Like even Western Michigan came bottom. Caleb Ellaby, like a fantastic quarterback. But they could have on another day things gone their way, could have won. Like the MAC as a whole is a really fun league to watch. It's a lot of good football. The times like Akron and that let it down, but as a standard, it's pretty consistent across the board. They're not big sides. There's no one there that recruits heavily, but these are small schools. And Blaine Gabbert, his brother, he's the quarterback at the I think it's Miami, Ohio. I think it's Gabbert Jr. So there's a lot of big names here. There's a lot of pretty well-known quarterbacks that goes to the MAC, and they produce some good players. Julian Edelman, he was at Kent State quarterback. So these aren't by any means small schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, when you've got 2 wins between the bottom and top of your divisions, Western Michigan finishing bottom of the division 7 and 5, it just shows you how competitive it is. And like I've started watching some of these games earlier in the week. I remember watching, I think it was Western Michigan and Central Michigan. And Central Michigan were underdogs by a lot, and they were 14 points down dead early. It was about 1 a.m, and I was about to go to bed. And then they got a kick return touchdown for about 90 yards. I stayed up and watched it. They ended up smashing them against all odds. It was a great game, and I've got quite invested in it since then. So it is fun to watch. Northern Illinois, Kent State. Any predictions on that one? Who's gonna go home with that? I think if my notes are right, Kent State are slight favourites. I could be wrong, but I did see it somewhere. I found it hard to find it. But where are we going?
I don't know. It's I'm pretty sure Rocky Lombard. I'm pretty sure Rocky Lombard has put most games on his shoulders this year. I think NIU will take this one in a close one.
Well, because Ryan's such a friendly guy, we'll go with Northern Illinois. We'll go with the clean sweep, and hopefully it's a great day for him and they get a title. But, Kent State, this will be their first in about 50 years. So, not going to bemoan them if they finally win a title. So good luck and may the best man win. Next, we've got the Mountain West, the second Mountain Conference. So that's split into the Mountain West Division and the MW Mountain Division. So in the West, that was won by the San Diego State Aztecs. They finished 11-1 on the year, 7-1 in the division. Their only defeat to Fresno State, love to win games, but then love to lose the ones that you don't expect them to. Fresno State came second in that division, 9-3, 6-2. Obviously, if they'd have won that game, they would have switched around. Fresno State would have won the division. Such as can be. The Nevada Wolfpack, Carson Strong, they came third, 8-4, 5-3. Some disappointing losses for them. They lost to Fresno State. They lost a couple of big games, but Carson Strong, he's had a good year, and I think he's done his draft prospect, no end of good. So hopefully he's on our radar, maybe. Then you've got the San Jose State Spartans, 5-7, 3-5. The Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, best name ever, 6-7, 3-5 in the division. And then you've got UNLV, the Raiders, finishing bottom, 2-10, 2-6 in the division. Not a great year for them. Then in the Mountain Conference, that was won by Utah State Aggies. Great year for Utah. They finished 9-3, 6-2. And they picked out the Air Force Falcons, who also finished 9-3, 6-2. That game between them ended 49-45 to Utah State a few weeks back. And I think they dug themselves out of about a 13, 14-point hole Air Force had that game won and they let it slip from under their fingers and they could have won a title. The margins are that small. Boise State, they were the Mountain Kings last year. Not so this year. 7-5, 5-3 in the division. They just never got going. They lost the first week and they never looked like they were getting going after that. Then you've got Wyoming, 6-6, 2-6. Colorado State, 3-9, 2-6. And the New Mexico Lobos, 3-9, 1-7. Oh man, that is a shame for Air Force, missing out by a few points when they had their destiny in their own hands. Such a shame for them.
Yeah, they came so close, but in the end, I suppose they finished so far. Like, I suppose they've only got themselves to blame. When you get a lead out and you can't close the game out, I suppose some will say, well, they won't deserve the title game, unfortunately. So close, but yet so far. Fresno State, weird team. Started so well. Were on fire for a couple of weeks, slipped up. Boise State, now they were a weird one because they beat Fresno State, as I mentioned. They also beat BYU, I believe, in a big upset. Like Honk Bachmeier as their quarterback, very up and down, but then lost to Central Florida. Like they were in the last 2 years, they've let their title slip leads like they were, as you mentioned, the Kings of the Mountain West. If you look for winning percentages, Boise State between 2020 and 2000, one of the best franchises in all of football, like a top 10 with the powerhouse. They're a proper powerhouse. San Jose State are weird because under Nick Starkel, their quarterback last year, I'm pretty sure they won everything, and I'm pretty sure they went like 12-1, but they managed to somehow only go 5-7 this year. Like total collapse. Even with him under center, things just went totally wrong. Maybe they were a bit of a one-hit wonder last year. It's just it's a really tough conference. There's not much over margin. Like I say, UNLV, Tate Martell, I don't think he ever saw the field. Transferred there, don't think he played once this year. Don't even know if he took any snaps. They're a bit of a mess, really. They're just proper bottom feeders, unfortunately, the Mountain West, but it's a proper hard gritty conference.
Yeah, and it can be shown, there's not too much difference in conference between a lot of them. Most of the teams have at least 2 or 3 wins in there, they're all sort of very close in. Now, obviously, San Diego State, Utah State is for the Mountain West Championship as it is. I mean, coming into this, San Diego State haven't been the best. They only put UNLV away 28-20. Boise State, they beat 27-16, 11 points. But, not the most convincing performances in the world. But Utah State put 44 on Wyoming, 35 on New Mexico, coming into this in good form. But obviously, Utah State are traveling to San Diego, and San Diego are 6.5-point favorites for this. Upset on the cards, or is this San Diego State's lose? Obviously, they only lost one all year, by far and away the best in the conference, flat out. Do you expect this one to go to form?
No, actually. I think I can see Utah State actually pulling a surprise here. The fact that they got so far behind from Air Force, but managed to still eke out a win and dig themselves out of a hole tells me that they won't easily roll over. They've got the better offense. San Diego State have got a pretty stingy defense, so it's going to be the immovable object in the mountain. But I think Utah might be able to crack them. I might be able to put a few points on them, and I don't think that San Diego State will be able to keep up with them scoring if they really take their foot off the gas.
I'd say, you look at the form coming in, and Utah State, the form team, obviously they've both won, but they're putting down more points, and UNLV are not the greatest of opposition. San Diego State struggled. I don't know. I see this one maybe going to form. I think San Diego State win, but I think it's very close. It's not a 6.5-pointer as it's made out to be there. So the Mountain West very much up for grabs. Now we move into your home division now, the Pac-12, and I'm sure you've been waiting to discuss this one. I can see the look of joy on your face there. The Pac is split into North and South. In the North, Oregon won this one, 10-2 on the season, 7-2 in division. Obviously, a couple of big in-division losses for them. Washington State, the Cougars, somehow they finished second, 7-5, 6-3. Oregon State, the Beavers, they were 7-5, 5-4. California, the Golden Bears, 4-7, 3-5, and you include a really bad loss to Arizona in their rubbish season for them. The Washington Huskies, terrible season, 4-8, 3-6 in the division. And Stanford, after some promising results and beating Oregon, finished bottom of the Pac North, 3-9, 2-7 there. Then in the Pac South, won by the Utah Utes, 9-3, 8-1 in the division, just one defeat there to blemish them. And in second, you've got the Arizona State Sun Devils, 8-4, 6-3. UCLA Bruins, 8-4, 6-3, but Arizona State beat them, so they finished second on head-to-head. Then you got USC, rotten season, 4-7, 3-5 in the division. Colorado, 4-8, 3-6, and then the Arizona Wildcats, miles behind, 1-11, 1-8 in the division. Just that sole win, a 10-3 victory over California to show for it. Yeah, not the season you wanted for Arizona State. They sort of fizzled off a bit towards the end. 2 weeks ago, they lost to Oregon State, which was the nail in the coffin, but they did get their pride back in the rivalry win this week. But Utah, I mean, they absolutely whooped Oregon the other week. And I know you didn't want to see it because it wasn't great for the Pac South ambitions, but it was great for them to see it lay an absolute ass whooping down on Oregon.
Yeah, Utah seemed to have found a quarterback in, I think it's called Charlie Rising. His kind of unknown presence has come in, and the moment he stepped in, they stepped up. Arizona State, we were ranked for 5 weeks. We were 5-0. Everything was rosy. And then we came up against some awkward sides. We lost that Washington State team that got rid of their coaches. We lost to Washington because they didn't have a coach either. Jimmy Lake is suspended. We're one of the worst penalised teams in football. We just hurt ourselves every time. Arizona hadn't won a game in 2 years until they met a Cal team that were just absolutely, it's embarrassing. You should be utterly embarrassed if you lose to Arizona Wildcats because they are a terrible football team. Don't let anyone tell you that otherwise. Arizona State now, 1,300 days since Arizona beat Arizona State. 5 state cups, we own the state. But if you ask me who's the best team in the Pac-12, it's Utah, it's not Oregon. So you know how my prediction is going to go. Oregon, they got by pretty well. They struggled in conference when it mattered. Oregon State, they actually looked really good. They have gone under radar nicely. They had a pretty good year. Washington State, very unpredictable side. You don't know what you're going to get. Played good defense. I'm pretty sure. They saw some stat like consecutive games of an interception. Great secondary that's able to take the ball away. They get turnovers when they need them. Cal Golden Bears, just putrid side. They've got no direction, going nowhere right now. It's just a mess. USC, suddenly everything's looking bright and rosy for them. 4-7 now, but watch them be 9-3 next year very easily. Won't surprise me at all. It's the Pac-12. It's messy. It's a really messy just conference. People don't like it. People think it's the basing of the Power Fives. Everyone thinks it's crap and hates on it. It is crap, but it's my crap. And if you're a head coach and you want to try and make the playoffs, maybe it's the best route by dominating it. Try and go unbeaten. That's what Lincoln Riley's going to try to do.
And speaking of head coaches, it looks like yours isn't going anywhere.
No, there's rumours. It's not been confirmed that Hermedge is going to stay. I think Antonio Pierce, the defensive coordinator, the athletic director, will as well. We've got Marvin Lewis. He's like a special executive. So Arizona State is full of NFL coaches. We are primed and we've got good talent, but we just shoot ourselves in the foot. We've penalties every week, and now we've just lost our starting running back. He's decided he don't want to be here next year. Don't know what's happening with quarterback. Don't even know if we've got a quarterback going to happen with Daniels. I really fear we had a chance this year. This was a golden chance to win the title. We started so well and we fell flat on our asses, and it's not going to happen next year. We are going to go back to being bang average again. I've had a look at the projections. We're projected another average bowl game again. We're just a good average bowl team side. That's all we are. And then next year, it's just going to get way harder. More recruits coming in, more coaches. it's just going to become even more difficult.
Yeah, I think it was a shame. I mean, obviously losing to Washington State without a head coach, there was some bad defeats in there. But I think all teams did. I think the hard luck story for me was UCLA. We raved about them so much at the start of the season, and they had so much promise. But again, they just fizzled out, and they're going to lose. I think Charbonnet's gone. I think Thompson Robinson's gone, is he not? So that's their offense undergoing a rebuild as well. So it's going to be hard to see, but I get your point. USC, I think they're not going to be fourth in the division next year. I think you can pretty safely say that. But, moving ahead to the Pac-12 title game, you mentioned Oregon, Utah. They played 2 weeks ago. Utah destroyed Oregon, and I think Utah also destroyed Kayvon Thibodeau's hold over the number 1 pick in the draft, because they absolutely and completely nullified him. And it's not like they even tried to avoid him. They ran directly at him at times. They threw directly at him, and they still somehow managed to get past him. It was eerie how much they just dominated in that game. They just took the game to Oregon and completely and utterly dominated them. I mean, they open as 2.5-point favorites in this as well. Do you just see a repeat of this, or is it a case of Oregon might learn their lessons and come back stronger and Kayvon shows up big in the championship game, or do you just see it happening again? Utah just employing the same strategy and completely dominating them.
Carbon copy. Utah are going to win comfortably again. They're going to dominate Oregon. They're going to keep Kayvon quiet again. I expect a complete same result. They're going to win by at least 2 scores. 2.5-point favorite is way undervaluing them. That's really harsh on Utah, because they have a game plan. They're now to stop Kayvon. You stop Kayvon, you run the ball, got a decent quarterback, good special teams, got a good secondary, got multiple turnovers. They have the key. They have the secret. They're now to beat Oregon. They'll do it again.
Yeah, I think Utah are going to win as well. I hope they do. I think they deserve it more out of the teams. I think Oregon have struggled at points this year, and Utah have just performed incredibly well. And that blowout win a few weeks ago, they were quite obviously the better side. They know what they're doing. They've got the game plan right. So hopefully they do that again. So yeah, we're both going Utah for the Pac-12 title game. There's one more game left as well. California play USC in a COVID rearrangement. So Lincoln Riley actually gets to see his team play a game this year. So USC will probably win that one pretty easy, and he'll get his first look at his players there. We're down to the last couple of conferences now, nearly there. I know it's been a mammoth episode, but we've had an awful lot to get through. We got the big one here, the one that's going to affect the playoffs the most. And we're talking about the SEC, the Southeastern Conference. That's got an East and a West division. In the East, Georgia, 12-0, 8-0 in the division, completely and utterly bullied every single team they've played this year, and they look unstoppable on their way towards a natty. Behind them, it's the Kentucky Wildcats, 9-3, 5-3 in division. Kentucky were unbeaten for a very long time this year, and then just completely and utterly lost their way, but still managed to get second in the division. But 3 games behind Georgia, they've completely and utterly been the powerhouse there. You got the Tennessee Volunteers after that, 7-5, 4-4 in the division. Missouri Tigers, 6-6, 3-5, as were the South Carolina Gamecocks, but head-to-head Missouri top. Florida Gators, 6-6, but just 2-6 in division. What a horrid season it's been for them. Now, Dan Mullen is gone. They've got a new head coach, and they've got a lot of rebuilding to do. And then propping up the bottom, the Vanderbilt Commodores. I always think of Lionel Richie when I hear that. Don't know why, but 2-10, 0-8 on the season. No wins in the conference. Bad year for them. In the SEC West, the Alabama Crimson Tide, 11-1, 7-1 on the season. In the division, obviously that huge loss to Texas A&M really, really stung them and has put their playoff participation in massive jeopardy. The Ole Miss Rebels, 10-2, 6-2 in division. Great season for Matt Corral. Couple of damaging defeats. Lane Kiffin spouting his mouth off a little before games has cost them maybe a little bit. And then you've got a big gap back then. So you've got the Arkansas Razorbacks, 8-4, but just 4-4 in division. As are Texas A&M, exactly the same. Arkansas ahead on head-to-head. Mississippi State Bulldogs, 7-5, 4-4. The Auburn Tigers, 6-6, 3-5. And propping up the Set West right at the very bottom, LSU, 6-6, 3-5. They lost to Auburn, so they're bottom of the division. I don't think anybody saw LSU finishing bottom of the SEC West this year, but at the top, two very clear-cut candidates who've pretty much bullied every team they've played this year.
Yeah, the SEC people, if you ask the people, the consensus say the SEC is the powerhouse. When it must be, because you look at a side like Ole Miss that are third, and they would probably win nearly every other conference in football. Like, they could easily win any conference they wanted, and they could only come third here. It's so hard. Like, I feel sorry for Vanderbilt. They're one of the worst teams in football. They have been for years. Like, I'm not hating the Commodores. You're just a terrible football team. You should not be in the SEC. You just simply don't belong there. I don't know how they keep it there. It's like LSU coming bottom is just so weird because like they were average. Like I'd expect LSU to beat Auburn. Like say they in the other conference, like LSU could come way higher, but they've come bottom of that side. And you've got likes of it's just weird. Like say you got Mississippi State, you got like Will Rogers, one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, but they got no defense. You've got Auburn, don't turn up in the big games. Bo Nix might be leaving. I've heard rumours he may transfer. He ended his year badly, broken foot. But teams, they could only beat teams that they're able to run on with Tank Bigsby. They haven't got the best defence. But Alabama, I checked the score, I think after 3 quarters. I don't think they scored yet. They had no points. They could not score against Auburn for nearly 3 quarters. You're right when they say that their playoff spot is in huge jeopardy. They really have to take the game to Georgia. Even if they lose, they have to go lights out, make Georgia work really hard for it. That's the only way they probably stay in. But they are backed into a corner right now. It's very easy for them to slip out. Ole Miss, fantastic. I read somewhere something like first time they've gone unbeaten at home in a season since like 1954. They won all the home games at home. They looked perfect. They didn't look bad in their losses. Matt Corral, perfect year. Couldn't have gone any better for him in his draft stock. Lane Kiffin, some people hate him. Some people love him. I love the guy. I think he might leave though. Florida, for their 500 season, you look at them and all their holes and all their issues. It's kind of hard to realize how they even got to that bowl eligibility figure because there's just things that went so many wrong there. South Carolina, mad props to them. Zeb Noland took over as quarterback after one game, their graduate assistant, because he had no quarterbacks because they were hurt. He played lots of games in the season and they actually did okay. Like they actually had an okay season by Gamecock standards, despite all the adversity. So they can't have too many complaints. But just a great, really wild, unpredictable kind of conference. Mississippi State, that's a Texas A&M on the day can beat anyone, and on any other day can get smacked by someone else. We heard so much about this Texas A&M defense. We didn't see it though. Like, where is it? What happened to it? Because it didn't keep anyone out. It didn't stop no one, did it?
No, they didn't. I mean, this is going to be a weird one for Ole Miss now. Obviously, Corral's leaving for the draft, and they're patiently hoping that they can get the new Manning there. So I think that it's a bit weird to think what they're going to do at quarterback now, whilst they wait to see if they can snag the new Manning. Do you reckon that who's their next guy there? Do they have a guy to replace Corral, or are they going to be in a bit of a?
I've seen strong links to possibly Dylan Gabriel as a bridge quarterback because Lane Kiffin thinks he can get to Arch Manning, who won't be an entry until 2023, but he's got serious competition. But that Eli, all the family members, Archie, Ole Miss is in the Manning blood, so it kind of makes sense. It's tradition, but they can have real competition. But for me, John Rice Plumlee was the quarterback, moved to wide receiver. I don't see him going back to quarterback now because he's done okay there. They need a bridge guy. So I think they need to hurry up and get Spencer Rattler or take one of these portal guys because I don't think there's an next man up there yet. And no. I don't know if there's all these rumors saying that if if the Florida job came up, Lane Kiffin would leave. Well, it's there, Lane. Do you want it? Do you want to go to Florida? Do you want, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's another one. Well, just to end this off, you mentioned about how you're surprised Florida got bowl eligibility. Every single team in the SEC, bar Vanderbilt, reached 6 wins. So they all got bowl eligibility. I think that just shows you how strong the SEC is. All but one team got bowl eligibility. Whether they'll all get it, I don't know. But, just to end this out, obviously, the SEC title game now, Alabama versus Georgia. This could derail Alabama's season. Georgia open 6.5-point favorites. They've not looked like no one's looked like they're going to touch them this year. Even Clemson just didn't lay a paw on them, even though they've had a bad year. But they were just completely dismantled by them defensively. That front seven are amazing. Can Alabama? Well, obviously Alabama can pull off an upset, but are you going favourite here? Georgia going to win, or is it Alabama?
I don't know, because Alabama turn up in the big games, don't they? When it really matters. Like, they are a historic playoff side. This is their playoff, because they know if they lose, there's a good chance they're going home and not going to make it. So they're going to have to turn up and be properly prepared. But then Georgia, that stingy defense, it don't matter who's turned up all year. They have not given up more than so many yards per carry points. This is a real test for Georgia's title credentials. But then Stetson Bennett, he's kind of ticked them over nicely all year. He's not a fantastic quarterback. Neither is JT Daniels. I think the quarterback play might struggle against the Alabama defense, but I'll take Georgia. I think this could be low scoring. I think they want to clamp them down completely, because that's what Georgia have been doing all year, just stifling teams.
Yeah, I'm taking Georgia in a game where neither team gets to 20 points. I know Bryce Young's had a hell of a year, but he's not come up against the front seven like this yet. Not even close. And I think they're going to struggle, all the better for it. And on Alabama's side, you've got Will Anderson, as you mentioned earlier, playing the football of his life. I think these two defenses are going to strangle the hell out of one another, but Georgia will win, such is what they are. Right, and then finishing all this off, we've been going for ages, so we've got the Sun Belt we're finishing off with. This is one of the most intriguing title games for me. I look at it and I'm really excited for this. So there's a Group A and a Group B for the Sun Belt. Group A, Appalachian State won this 10-2 on the season, 7-1 in division. Well, just one game behind them, there was the Georgia State Panthers. They were 7-5 overall, but 6-2 in division. And then Grayson McCall and the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, 10-2 on the year, 6-2 in division. Really ill-timed injury for Grayson McCall cost them. He missed a few games, and that second defeat came in there, which was a big bullet for them. And then Troy Trojans, 5-7, 3-5. Georgia Southern, we mentioned them and their problems, wrapping up 3-9, 2-6. And then in Group B, the Louisiana Raging Cajuns ran away with this division, completely ran away with it. 11-1 on the year, 8-0 in division. The one slip up to the Texas Longhorns, who, as we know, on their day can beat anybody. Then they went 8-0. The next team, 3-5. That's the Texas State Bobcats, 4-8, 3-5. Louisiana Monroe, 4-8, 2-6. South Alabama, 5-7, 2-6. Arkansas State, 2-10, 1-7. I'm not going to go over too much about it. I mean, obviously, great year for Appalachian State. A shame for Coastal Carolina, really, having Grayson McCall injured. But they showed they weren't a one-year flash in the pan. They've had 2 really good seasons now where that offense has looked electric.
Yeah, Coastal Carolina this year probably weren't too bothered about championship. They wanted consistency. They wanted to show that you could be thereabouts on a regular basis. Grayson McCall, another good year. They've produced a NFL tie-end probably in Isaiah Likely. They've got a stud in Jordan Strong cornerback who's returning. So they're building the spine of a team. They've got the foundations. They've got the really young head coach that a lot of people want. So they're building a program. It's a bit lopsided, the Sun Belt. You look at the other side where, like Louisiana, like some of these sides should move over. Like, it's a bit of a mess. It's a bit unfair on one side. Appalachian State, I didn't expect them to be so good, but they brought in a high-level transfer quarterback. They brought in Chase Bryce, that's been at Clemson and Duke. He took a big jump down, like Sun Belt. It worked for him. They've looked fantastic at App State. The Mountaineers are a really well-balanced side. They score pretty heavily. They're a good unbeaten in conference player. Then you got the Raging Cajuns, like say Billy Napier on his way out. Kind of want to end the season on a high. Now he's leaving. Another undefeated side. This is going to be a really interesting title game because I don't know the ins and outs of both sides, but I know that they're both high-powered offenses. So this one could be a proper barnstorming shootout. I think if I go with the form, I'm probably going to take Louisiana.
Well, just to put it into perspective, Louisiana beat them by over 20 points in the season. The one defeat that Appalachian State had was to Louisiana by over 20 points. But Appalachian State open up, even despite the fact that they're traveling to Louisiana, Appalachian State are 2.5-point favorites. So that's where the betting's going on this. But Louisiana absolutely destroyed them in season. So, I'm probably siding with you. I mean, Louisiana are the ranked team as well. They've had a really good year. I mean, there's no shame in losing to the Longhorns. That offense on its day can put up so many points. You just can't keep up with them. So I would agree, maybe Louisiana, but I think that's probably one of the games of the title conference shootouts to watch out for. I don't know if you probably agree with that one.
Yeah, it should be a fun watch. And there's going to be guys there that are probably going to the draft as well. You're going to find some people there that you don't really know of that are going to pop up in mock drafts next year.
Exactly. So, it's going to be interesting to see where some of these guys land, and, big, strong performance in these title games could just do everything for their title credentials. So that's everything really for today. That is the leagues explained, where everybody finished, previews of the title games going on there, some really good fixtures to look out for, which are going to influence the football playoffs greatly. Is there anything else you want to add, Ryan, before we close on this one?
No, I think we've got through one half of it all.
Yeah, I know it's been a long one today. We've gone on about 3 hours. Good Lord, that's gone quick. But, there's a lot going on. It takes a lot of time to go through and explain. But hopefully, thanks for everyone who has watched with us for this one. We do appreciate it. And we will be back on Friday. We're going to take a look at a few things. We're going to look at coordinators, going to head coaches, possibly. Ryan and me will have a look at that. Then we're going to have a look at some of the stats leaders of the year. So some of the best quarterbacks, receivers. We're going to have a little look at some of these lists, see who's in there, who we may be surprised about, who's surpassed expectations, etc. And then we're going to take a look more at some of the bowl games that are going to be finalised, because obviously a lot of bowl fixtures coming up. So there's a lot for us to go through. And as always, if you've got questions, scout reports, anything about the draft, because it becomes very relevant now, just drop us comments for them, and we'll be quite happy to go through those for you. Just in terms of future podcasts coming up, tomorrow we'll be back to our main Detroit Lions podcast. We will be looking at the preview of the game coming up against the Minnesota Vikings this week. We may even have a guest on with us, and there'll be a few of us on there. So if you do want to come and join us for that, that will be absolutely great. And then the college football podcast, as we say, that will be back Friday. Not Wednesday, just because there's that much for us to go through. We will be back for a second episode. But in terms of our Wednesday podcast, we'll be back next week, and we will probably take a look at our mock drafts. As you all remember, we did the half-season mock drafts. We said we'd come back to it at the end of the year. The championship games will have been played by this time next week. So, tune in to see whether we're going to stick with our guns with the players we got, or we're going to hope that you all forgot our mock drafts and just go for completely different guys, of course, as 90% of people do on there. Is there anything else you want to add, Ryan, before we sign off this week?
No. That's
all right.
Everything.
All right. Well, like I say, thanks to yourself and, for joining this week, providing us with all your insight onto the FCS and everything. It's been great. We'll keep an eye on those. Those games are coming up. So we will, of course, keep you updated on everything FCS, but just remains to go through our socials. Obviously, you can find us Facebook, Detroit Lions Fans, One Pride Worldwide is our Facebook group. And then you can find us Royal Lions UK on there, on Twitter, Twitch and Instagram. You can find us on ROTL_UK, all in caps. And there are a few others, but I've forgotten. We've been going for a while. So hopefully Matt's there. If he's not, you might just hear us talking for a couple more minutes until he ends the episode. But until we see you next time. Thanks ever so much for joining us on the Royal Alliance College Football Podcast, and we will see you again soon. One Pride.
One Pride.